The kingdom of Silvervale was a land where the mornings arrived softly. Golden sunlight spilled over emerald hills, mist floated gently above crystal rivers, and white swans drifted across quiet lakes. Wildflowers danced with the breeze, and the songs of robins and bluebirds welcomed each new day. It was a kingdom so peaceful that travelers often believed time itself moved more slowly there. Far beyond the shining towers of the royal castle, nestled beside the whispering forest, stood a small wooden cottage. Its roof was covered with moss, ivy climbed its stone chimney, and a tiny vegetable garden surrounded the front yard. This humble home belonged to a young warrior named Rowan. Rowan was poor. Not the kind of poor that people whispered about with pity, but the quiet kind that carried dignity. His clothes were patched many times over, his boots had been repaired more often than replaced, and his only sword was an old steel blade that had belonged to his late father. Yet Rowan never complained. Each morning before sunrise, he rose from his simple bed, swept the wooden floor of his cottage, fed his faithful white horse, Snow, and offered a warm smile to everyone he met. Although he had very little, he always found a way to help others. If an elderly farmer's fence had fallen during the night, Rowan repaired it. If children lost a toy beside the river, Rowan searched until he found it. If storms damaged a roof, he climbed the ladders without asking for payment. The villagers often tried to reward him with coins, but Rowan usually accepted only a loaf of bread, fresh milk, or perhaps a basket of apples. Kindness always returns in its own way, he would say with a gentle smile. Everyone admired his generous heart. Everyone except those who judged people by their wealth. Many nobles passing through the village laughed when they saw the humble warrior. "Look at him," one merchant scoffed. "A warrior with rusty armor." Another laughed. "He'll never become a knight." Rowan simply bowed politely and continued on his way. He never argued. He believed peaceful hearts were stronger than angry words. Deep beneath the quiet hills, where no sunlight had reached for thousands of years, ancient stones slept in silence. Hidden inside those forgotten caverns rested a magical seal older than the kingdom itself. Within the glowing seal shimmered countless symbols of silver and gold. Every few centuries, the seal pulsed gently, almost as if it were breathing. Tonight, it glowed a little brighter. A distant whisper echoed through the darkness. "The last guardian lives." The light slowly faded once more. Far above, Rowan peacefully chopped firewood, completely unaware. Inside the magnificent castle of Silvervale, life looked very different. Marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers. Silken banners hung from towering walls. Golden fountains sparkled beneath painted ceilings. Servants hurried through endless halls carrying trays of fresh flowers and warm bread. Yet despite all the beauty, one room always felt lonely. Princess Elena sat quietly beside a tall window overlooking the royal gardens. Her long chestnut hair rested gently over a pale blue gown, and her soft brown eyes watched butterflies drift among blooming roses. She looked peaceful, but inside her heart lived an old sadness. When Elena was only 6 years old, her beloved mother, Queen Aurora, had fallen gravely ill. The queen had been known throughout the kingdom for her kindness. She visited orphanages, cared for the poor, and remembered the names of gardeners and cooks alike. Before she passed away, she held Elena's tiny hands and whispered softly, "My little star, never let bitterness find a home in your heart. No matter what happens, choose kindness." Those had been her final words. Elena had never forgotten them. Years later, the king married again. His new wife was Lady Morgana. At first, everyone believed Morgana would care for the young princess. Instead, she saw Elena as an obstacle. Morgana wanted only one thing: her own daughter, Lady Celeste, to become the future queen. Celeste was beautiful, dressed in expensive gowns woven with silver thread and glittering jewels. She admired mirrors more than books and believed wealth made someone important. Whenever Elena entered a room, Celeste found a reason to laugh. "Oh," she would say loudly, "our perfect princess is feeding birds again." Or perhaps, "Careful, Elena. Morgana never stop her daughter." Often, she joined in. "A true princess should know her place," Morgana would say coldly. Elena simply smiled politely. She never answered with anger. Instead, she thanked the servants who worked beside her and continued tending flowers in the gardens. The castle staff adored her. She remembered birthdays. She learned everyone's names. She even baked sweetbread with the royal cooks whenever she had time. Many whispered that she had inherited Queen Aurora's gentle heart. That evening, as the golden sun disappeared behind distant mountains, Rowan finished helping an old widow carry baskets of vegetables home. The woman smiled warmly. "You work harder than anyone I know." Rowan chuckled. "It keeps me healthy." She handed him a small loaf of fresh bread. "I have little to offer." Rowan accepted it gratefully. "It is more than enough." As he walked back toward the whispering forest, fireflies began to glow among the trees. The forest seemed unusually quiet. Even the birds had stopped singing. Snow suddenly paused. The horse lifted his head and stared deep into the woods. "What is it, boy?" Rowan asked gently. A faint silver light flickered between the ancient trees. Curious, Rowan stepped closer. There, sitting upon an old stone, was an elderly woman wrapped in a cloak the color of moonlight. Her silver hair flowed almost to the ground, and her eyes shone like stars reflected upon calm water. She smiled as though she had been expecting him. "Good evening, young warrior." Rowan bowed respectfully. "Good evening, grandmother. Are you lost?" The old woman laughed softly. "No, child. I have been waiting." Rowan looked puzzled. "For me?" She nodded. "For many years." She reached into her cloak and produced a tiny crystal shaped like a teardrop. It glowed with a gentle silver light. "This belonged to your ancestors." Rowan frowned. "My parents never spoke of ancestors with treasures." "They wished to protect you." She placed the crystal into his hands. The moment his fingers touched it, the air around them shimmered. Leaves rustled though no wind blew. The stars above seemed to brighten. For just a heartbeat, ancient golden markings flickered across Rowan's hands before disappearing as quickly as they had appeared. Rowan blinked. What was that? The old woman's smile grew mysterious. "The world remembers things that people have forgotten." "I don't understand." "You are not meant to." "Not yet." She looked toward the heavens. "The day will come when darkness returns." Her voice became barely louder than the breeze. "And when it does, the greatest magic ever known will awaken." Rowan stared at her in silence. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." She chuckled kindly. "No, Rowan. I have waited my whole life to meet you." She slowly stood and began walking deeper into the glowing forest. After only a few steps, mist surrounded her. Then she vanished, as if she had never been there. Rowan looked around in amazement. Only silence remained. He glanced down at the small crystal resting in his palm. It had stopped glowing. "That was certainly strange," he murmured. Snow nudged his shoulder gently, urging him toward home. Rowan slipped the crystal into his pocket and smiled. "Come on, my friend. Tomorrow will be another busy day." Neither Rowan nor anyone else in Silvervale could have imagined that the quiet young warrior, who owned little more than a humble cottage and an old sword, carried within him a forgotten power older than kingdoms, stronger than dragons, and destined to awaken when the fate of the world hung in the balance. But for now, beneath a sky filled with peaceful stars, the forgotten warrior returned home, unaware that destiny had already begun to whisper his name. The morning sun rose gently over the kingdom of Silver Vale, bathing the castle walls in soft golden light. Dew sparkled on every blade of grass, and the sweet fragrance of blooming roses drifted through the palace gardens. From a distance, the royal castle looked like a place where every dream came true. Yet behind its towering marble walls, one gentle heart longed not for riches, but for peace. Princess Elena awoke before the palace servants stirred. She quietly folded her blankets, opened the windows of her chamber, and welcomed the cool morning breeze. Tiny sparrows landed on the windowsill, chirping cheerful songs as if greeting an old friend. Elena smiled warmly. "Good morning," she whispered. She scattered a handful of seeds onto the stone ledge, and soon the little birds gathered around her without fear. They trusted her completely. Watching them always reminded Elena of something her mother had once said. The kindest hearts never need to command. Love comes willingly. Those words had become a light in Elena's life. After dressing in a simple sky blue gown, she walked quietly through the palace halls. While other princesses might have spent hours choosing jewels or admiring themselves in mirrors, Elena preferred something much simpler. He visited the royal kitchens. The cooks welcomed her with bright smiles. "Good morning, Your Highness." "Good morning," Elena replied. "May I help today?" The elderly head cook chuckled. A princess asking to peel potatoes again. Elena laughed softly. "I've become quite good at it." Soon she was helping prepare fresh bread, cutting vegetables, and stirring warm soup for the palace workers. The servants often forgot she was royalty because she treated everyone as equals. One young kitchen maid accidentally dropped a basket of apples. They rolled across the floor. Before anyone else could react, Elena knelt beside her, gathering each apple carefully. The frightened maid lowered her head. "I'm so sorry, Princess." "There is nothing to apologize for," Elena said kindly. "Everyone makes mistakes." The girl smiled with relief. Little moments like these made the palace feel warmer, even if only for a while. Not everyone appreciated Elena's kindness. Lady Morgana watched from the doorway with narrowed eyes. Beside her stood Lady Celeste, dressed in a magnificent crimson gown embroidered with shimmering silver thread. Celeste frowned in disgust. "Mother, look at her. She behaves like a servant." Morgana crossed her arms. A future queen should never dirty her hands. Celeste laughed loudly enough for everyone to hear. Perhaps she was born in the wrong family. Several servants lowered their eyes. No one dared answer. Elena simply stood, brushed flour from her sleeves, and bowed politely. "I hope you both have a pleasant morning." Without waiting for a reply, she continued toward the gardens. Her calmness irritated Morgana even more. One day, Morgana whispered to Celeste, "Everyone will admire only you." Celeste smiled proudly. "I know they will." Outside, the royal gardens bloomed like a painting. White lilies floated upon quiet ponds. Butterflies danced among lavender bushes. Ancient oak trees stretched their branches toward the bright blue sky. Elena carried a small watering can as she gently cared for the flowers herself. The royal gardener approached with surprise. "Your Highness, you don't need to do this." "I know," Elena replied, "but flowers bloom more beautifully when someone loves them." The old gardener smiled. "You truly are your mother's daughter." Elena's eyes softened. She missed Queen Aurora every single day. Later that afternoon, Elena asked permission to visit the nearby village. Lady Morgana rolled her eyes. "Go if you wish. Just don't embarrass the royal family." Elena thanked her politely. She changed into a plain traveling cloak so the villagers would feel comfortable speaking with her. As she walked through the marketplace, children ran toward her with joyful smiles. Princess Elena. She laughed as they surrounded her. One little girl proudly showed Elena a tiny wooden bird her father had carved. "It's beautiful," Elena said. "I'll treasure it forever." The girl's eyes sparkled with happiness. Nearby, an elderly woman struggled to carry heavy baskets filled with vegetables. Without hesitation, Elena lifted one of the baskets. "Oh, Your Highness. It would make me happy to help." The old woman smiled gratefully. "You remind me so much of your dear mother." Those words filled Elena's heart with warmth. On the opposite side of the village, Rowan was already hard at work. A farmer's windmill had stopped turning after the night storm. Without expecting payment, Rowan climbed to the highest beam and carefully repaired the broken wooden blades. By afternoon, the windmill spun once again. The grateful farmer offered him a pouch of silver coins. Rowan gently shook his head. "A loaf of fresh bread is more than enough." "But you've worked all day." "I already have everything I need." The farmer insisted on giving Rowan a warm loaf of bread, fresh butter, and a small jar of honey. Rowan accepted with sincere gratitude. As he walked away, Snow trotted happily beside him. Near the edge of the village stood a tiny orphanage. Its roof leaked whenever it rained. The children had few toys. Yet laughter still filled its little courtyard. Rowan stopped by almost every week. This afternoon, he carried pieces of leftover wood from the windmill. "What are you making?" one little boy asked. Rowan smiled.
"A surprise."
There she noticed a familiar white horse drinking peacefully beside the riverbank. Snow. Just beyond him stood Rowan, quietly watching the sunset. Neither of them spoke at first. The evening sky glowed with shades of orange, pink, and purple. Finally Rowan noticed her. He bowed respectfully. "Good evening, Princess."
Elena smiled warmly.
"Good evening." Snow walked toward Elena and gently nudged her shoulder. She laughed softly. "I think your horse likes me." "He likes kind people." They shared a quiet smile. For several peaceful moments, they simply watched the river flow. It felt strangely comfortable. Neither cared about silence. Sometimes silence carried more kindness than words. As twilight deepened, a cool breeze swept across the bridge. Suddenly an elderly woman appeared from the forest path. She leaned upon a wooden staff carved with ancient symbols. It was the same mysterious woman Rowan had met the previous evening. Her silver eyes sparkled knowingly. She looked first at Rowan, then at Elena. Finally she smiled. "So, the stars have begun weaving their threads." Neither Rowan nor Elena understood her words. The old woman stepped closer. She looked directly into Rowan's eyes. "Have you kept the crystal?" Rowan nodded. "Yes." "Good." She turned toward Elena. "And you?" She gently touched the princess's forehead. For only a single heartbeat, a faint silver light shimmered around Elena before fading into the evening air. Elena blinked. What was that? The old woman smiled peacefully. The moon recognizes gentle hearts. Before either of them could ask another question, the wind rustled through the trees. Fireflies filled the air like floating stars. When Rowan looked again, the old woman had vanished. Only the whispering forest remained. Elena looked toward Rowan with quiet amazement. "Does that happen often?" Rowan chuckled softly. "I certainly hope not." They both laughed. It was the first carefree laugh Elena had shared with someone outside the palace in many years. As darkness settled over Silvervale, neither of them realized that fate had quietly brought their paths together for the very first time. Far away, hidden beneath mountains older than history itself, ancient shadows stirred once more. The sleeping darkness had felt a tiny spark of forgotten magic, and somewhere deep within Rowan's soul, the ancient power of the World Guardian waited patiently for the day it would finally awaken. The first light of dawn painted the towers of Silvervale in shades of gold and rose. Gentle clouds drifted across the blue sky while the castle bells echoed softly through the kingdom, welcoming another peaceful morning. For the people of Silvervale, it seemed like an ordinary day. But within the royal palace, a decision was about to change many lives forever. King Alaric stood alone in the Hall of Crowns, gazing at an enormous map spread across a polished oak table. Small carved figures marked the neighboring kingdoms, Goldhaven to the east, Frostmere to the north, and the mighty kingdom of Ashenmere beyond the western mountains. Each kingdom had once been a trusted ally. Now, uncertain times had arrived. Years of poor harvests, expensive rebuilding after floods, and growing unrest had weakened Silvervale's treasury. Although the kingdom remained peaceful, its wealth was fading. The royal advisers entered the hall one by one. The oldest among them, Chancellor Edwin, bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, the council is assembled." King Alaric sighed. "Then let us begin." The council members gathered around the great table. "Our neighbors grow stronger each year," one advisor said. "Without new alliances, Silvervale may stand alone." Another nodded. "The simplest path is marriage." The king closed his eyes for a moment. Yet he had always hoped his beloved daughter would marry for love rather than duty. Unfortunately, kings rarely received such luxuries. From the shadows near the grand doorway, Lady Morgana listened carefully. A slow smile appeared on her face. This was the opportunity she had waited for. She stepped gracefully into the council chamber. "If I may offer a suggestion." The king looked toward her. "Speak." Morgana folded her hands elegantly. "Prince Adrian of Goldhaven has reached marriageable age." Several advisers nodded in agreement. "He is brave, well educated, a gifted magician. The alliance would greatly strengthen both kingdoms." King Alaric considered the proposal. "It is worthy of discussion." Morgana smiled. "My daughter Celeste would make a wonderful bride." Celeste, standing proudly beside her mother, lowered her head modestly, though inside she could barely contain her excitement. She had dreamed of becoming queen of another great kingdom. Gold, jewels, magnificent castles. Everything she desired waited beyond Silvervale's borders. The king remained silent. Then he spoke gently. "And Elena?" The room grew quiet. Morgana had expected the question. "I have also considered her future." Her voice sounded calm. "But perhaps a different path would suit her." The king frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Morgana walked toward one of the palace windows overlooking the distant countryside. "Princess Elena spends her days among villagers. She gardens. She cooks. She helps common folk. She has never cared for luxury." Several nobles exchanged uncertain glances. Morgana continued. "Perhaps she would be happiest with someone simple." The king looked thoughtful. "What kind of man?" A faint smile crossed Morgana's lips. "There is a young warrior named Rowan." The room immediately filled with whispers. "The poor swordsman. The one living beside the whispering forest. He owns almost nothing. A commoner." Morgana nodded. "He is honest, hard-working, kind. Exactly the sort of life Elena seems to prefer. Several advisors seemed confused. Others looked uncomfortable. Only Morgana smiled. Inside her heart, she celebrated. If Elena married a poor warrior, she would disappear from royal politics forever. Then Celeste alone would shine. Later that afternoon, the king walked quietly through the palace gardens. He found Elena sitting beneath an old oak tree, reading one of her mother's favorite books. She looked up with a gentle smile. "Father." King Alaric sat beside her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally he sighed. "I must ask something difficult." Elena closed her book. "I'm listening." "The council believes political marriages are necessary." She nodded slowly. "I understand. You have always deserved happiness. I wished your future could be your own choice." Elena smiled gently. "You've always done your best for the kingdom." She waited quietly. He lowered his eyes. The village warrior. Silence settled over the garden. Birds continued singing among the branches. A cool breeze carried the scent of roses through the air. "You know of him." She smiled. "I've seen him. And I met him by the river. He seems very kind." King Alaric looked astonished. "You aren't angry?" Elena gently shook her head. "My mother once told me that a person's heart is worth more than a crown. If Rowan is truly as kind as everyone says, then I have no reason to fear." He embraced his daughter. "You are more like your mother every day." He embraced his daughter. "You are more like your mother every day." Elsewhere inside the palace, Celeste celebrated before the decision had even become official. She stood before a magnificent mirror while servants measured silk for her wedding gown. "I shall soon live in Goldhaven." She laughed happily. "My palace will have crystal halls. Perhaps even golden fountains." Her friends admired her excitement. "And Princess Elena?" one asked. Celeste smirked. "She'll spend her days sweeping a little wooden cottage." The room filled with laughter. None of them noticed one young servant quietly leaving with tears in her eyes. Far beyond the castle walls, Rowan spent the afternoon repairing the roof of the village school. The children watched him from below. "Be careful," one little boy shouted. Rowan laughed. "I've climbed higher trees than this." By sunset the roof was finished. The village teacher offered him several silver coins. Once again Rowan refused. "A warm meal is enough." The teacher smiled. "You'll always remain poor." Rowan chuckled. "Perhaps. But I sleep peacefully every night." As evening settled over Silver Vale, Rowan sat outside his cottage beside a small fire. Snow grazed quietly nearby. He reached into his pocket and looked once more at the mysterious silver crystal. Although it no longer glowed, holding it always filled him with an unusual sense of peace. The forest became strangely quiet. Then footsteps approached. As evening settled over Silver Vale, Rowan sat outside his cottage beside a small fire. Snow grazed quietly nearby. He reached into his pocket and looked once more at the mysterious silver crystal. Although it no longer glowed, holding it always filled him with an unusual sense of peace. The forest became strangely quiet. Then footsteps approached. Sometimes the poorest soul carries the greatest light. Then she vanished into the silver mist. Rowan remained beside the fire, staring quietly at the crystal in his hands. Above him, countless stars shimmered across the night sky. Far away, Princess Elena looked up at those same stars from her palace balcony. Neither knew that the royal decree would soon bring their lives together. And hidden in the deepest shadows of the world, something ancient had begun to awaken, sensing the faint return of a power that had once protected every kingdom beneath the heavens. The news of the royal decree spread across the kingdom of Silvervale like a gentle breeze through the forests. In every village, marketplace, and quiet countryside home, people whispered the same surprising story. The princess is going to marry a poor warrior. Some could hardly believe it. Others smiled warmly. Among the villagers, Rowan's kindness was already well known. He may not own gold, an old baker said, but he has the richest heart in the kingdom. A shepherd nodded in agreement. I would trust Rowan with my life. But inside the royal palace, the whispers were very different. Lady Morgana sat proudly in her elegant chamber, while servants prepared expensive fabrics for Celeste's wedding. She sipped fragrant tea from a silver cup and smiled with satisfaction. Everything is unfolding perfectly. Celeste admired herself in a large crystal mirror. My wedding will be remembered for generations. She laughed softly. And Elena? She smirked. Her wedding will probably have more chickens than guests. The room filled with laughter. Outside the door, several servants lowered their heads in sadness. None of them believed Princess Elena deserved such cruelty. Meanwhile, Princess Elena remained as calm as ever. She spent the morning walking through the palace gardens, enjoying the songs of bluebirds and the fragrance of blooming roses. The royal seamstress hurried toward her carrying rolls of luxurious silk. Your Highness, I have wonderful fabrics from the eastern kingdoms. Silk embroidered with gold. Pearls from the southern sea.
Elena smiled gently.
They are beautiful. But may I ask for something simpler? The seamstress looked surprised. Simpler. A white dress. Plain. Comfortable. Just enough to remind me of my mother. The elderly seamstress's eyes became moist. It would be my greatest honor. Far away beside the whispering forest, Rowan knew nothing about silk gowns or palace celebrations. He spent the day repairing the roof of an elderly widow's cottage before chopping enough firewood to last her through the coming winter. As he stacked the final bundle, the village blacksmith approached. Rowan. I've heard the news. Rowan looked puzzled. What news? The blacksmith laughed. The whole kingdom is talking. You've been chosen to marry Princess Elena. Rowan nearly dropped his axe. I'm what? The blacksmith grinned. I thought you already knew. Rowan sat quietly on a tree stump. For several moments he couldn't find any words. Finally he whispered, There must be some mistake. I own almost nothing. My cottage is tiny. My roof still leaks when it rains. The blacksmith placed a hand on Rowan's shoulder. Perhaps the king sees something far more valuable. That evening, Rowan stood outside his cottage watching the sunset. Snow grazed peacefully nearby. The familiar silver crystal rested in his hand. He sighed softly. How could a princess ever be happy here? Just then, the mysterious old woman appeared once more from the edge of the forest. She smiled knowingly. You worry too much. Rowan looked at her. You already know. I know many things. I don't understand. I'm poor. I have no palace.
No servants. No treasures.
The old woman chuckled. Tell me. When birds choose where to build their nests, do they search for golden trees? Rowan smiled faintly.
No.
They search for safe branches. She nodded. And people are not so different. With those words, She quietly disappeared into the silver mist once again. Rowan looked toward his little cottage. For the first time, it didn't seem quite so small. A few days later, preparations began throughout the kingdom. The palace overflowed with expensive decorations for Celeste's wedding. Golden banners hung from marble balconies. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above enormous banquet halls. Musicians rehearsed elegant songs. Hundreds of servants hurried from room to room. Everything had to be perfect. Meanwhile, in Rowan's little village, children gathered wildflowers. Neighbors repaired the wooden fence surrounding his cottage. The village carpenter built a simple wooden table. Women baked fresh bread. Farmers brought baskets of apples, honey, vegetables, and homemade cheese. Nobody had much, yet everyone wanted to contribute. The entire village worked together with joyful hearts. On the morning before the wedding, Princess Elena requested permission to visit Rowan's village. Lady Morgana frowned. What possible reason could there be? I wish to meet the people who will become my neighbors. Morgana rolled her eyes. Go, if you insist. Escorted only by 2 royal guards, Elena rode quietly toward the whispering forest. As she entered the village, people greeted her warmly. Children waved excitedly. Elderly couples bowed with gentle smiles. No one seemed interested in her crown. Instead, they thanked her for visiting. One little girl offered Elena a tiny bouquet of wildflowers. They are for you. Elena knelt and accepted them happily. They're the most beautiful flowers I've received. Soon she reached Rowan's cottage. Rowan had been nervously sweeping the front yard for nearly an hour. When he saw the princess approaching, he quickly bowed. Your Highness. Elena smiled warmly. You may simply call me Elena. Rowan looked embarrassed. I don't think I can. She laughed softly. Then perhaps someday. She looked around the little cottage. It was small. The walls were old. The roof showed signs of many repairs. Yet colorful flowers surrounded every window. Birdhouses hung from nearby trees. A vegetable garden flourished beside the fence. Everything was simple, but everything was cared for with love. It's beautiful, Elena said. Rowan blinked. You think so? She nodded. It feels peaceful. They walked slowly through the garden together. Snow wandered happily beside them. Neither spoke much. Neither needed to. The gentle silence felt comfortable. As they reached the edge of the forest, Elena noticed injured birds resting inside small wooden shelters. You built these. Rowan smiled. They're healing. When they're strong enough, I'll set them free. Elena's eyes filled with admiration. My mother would have loved this place. Rowan smiled quietly. I wish I could have met her. The wedding day finally arrived. Unlike Celeste's magnificent ceremony inside the royal cathedral, Rowan and Elena requested something much simpler. The ceremony took place beneath the oldest oak tree in the kingdom. Sunlight filtered softly through emerald leaves. Wildflowers covered the grass.
Bluebirds sang overhead.
Villagers stood beside noblemen. Children laughed quietly. There were no golden thrones.
No jeweled crowns.
Only smiles. Princess Elena wore her simple white dress. Her only ornament was a small silver pendant that had belonged to Queen Aurora. Rowan wore freshly cleaned leather armor with a simple white cloak sewn by the village tailor. Though humble, he stood proudly. King Alaric himself walked Elena beneath the ancient tree. His eyes shone with both sadness and joy. When Rowan gently took Elena's hands, he spoke honestly. I cannot promise castles. I cannot promise riches. But I promise. I will spend every day trying to make you smile." A peaceful silence filled the meadow. Elena smiled through happy tears. "I don't ask for castles. I don't ask for jewels. I ask only for kindness. And you've already given me that." The village elder gently declared them husband and wife. At that very moment, a warm breeze swept through the meadow. Thousands of flower petals danced through the air. The ancient oak tree shimmered with a faint golden light that only a few people noticed. Hidden among the distant trees, the mysterious old woman smiled. "The first thread has been tied," she whispered to herself. Far beneath the mountains, ancient magical symbols glowed for a brief moment. The sleeping power within Rowan stirred ever so slightly, as if recognizing the union of two pure hearts. As the sun began to set, the villagers celebrated with music, homemade pies, fresh bread, dancing, and laughter. There were no golden goblets,
No extravagant feasts.
yet everyone agreed they had never attended a wedding filled with so much genuine happiness. That evening, Rowan and Elena walked together toward their little cottage beside the whispering forest. The windows glowed with warm candlelight. The garden swayed gently in the evening breeze. For the first time in many years, Princess Elena felt she was not leaving her home. She was finally arriving at one. The first morning after their wedding arrived with a gentle chorus of birdsong. Golden rays of sunlight slipped through the small wooden windows of Rowan's cottage, warming the cozy room with a soft glow. Outside, dew sparkled upon every leaf, and tiny butterflies danced above the colorful flowers that surrounded the little home. For the first time in many years, Princess Elena awoke with a peaceful smile. There were no palace servants waiting outside her door. No harsh voices echoed through long marble hallways. No whispered insults followed her every step. Instead, she heard the cheerful chirping of robins, the rustling leaves of the whispering forest, and the gentle neigh of snow outside the cottage. She sat quietly for a moment, listening. "This," she whispered softly, "feels like home." Meanwhile, Rowan was already outside collecting fresh water from the nearby stream. When he returned carrying 2 wooden buckets, he paused at the doorway. Elena was sweeping the little cottage with a smile. "Oh." Rowan looked embarrassed. "You didn't have to do that." She laughed gently. "I wanted to. But you're a princess." She looked at him with kind eyes. "I was a princess. Now I'm your wife. And this is our home." Rowan smiled. It was the warmest smile he had worn in many years. After breakfast, they worked together in the small vegetable garden. Rowan planted tomatoes and beans while Elena carefully watered rows of herbs and flowers. Tiny bluebirds landed on the wooden fence. Butterflies floated lazily through the warm morning air. Snow wandered nearby, happily nibbling fresh grass. As they worked together, they spoke about simple things. Favorite seasons. Childhood memories. The songs birds liked to sing. Neither spoke about wealth. Neither spoke about castles. For them, happiness seemed to grow naturally among the flowers. Later that morning, an elderly widow from the village arrived carrying a basket of fresh bread. "I wanted to thank you both." Rowan smiled. "You've already thanked me many times." The old woman laughed. "Then let me thank your wife." She turned toward Elena. "We've heard wonderful things about you." Elena accepted the basket gratefully. "You are all too kind." The widow smiled warmly. "You belong here." Those simple words touched Elena's heart more deeply than any royal title ever had. By afternoon, children began visiting the cottage. Some brought apples. Others carried flowers. One little boy proudly presented Rowan with a small wooden carving he had made himself. "It's not as good as yours." Rowan knelt beside him. "It's perfect." The boy beamed with pride. Soon the garden filled with laughter. Elena organized little games beneath the old oak tree while Rowan carved tiny wooden birds for every child. Even Snow joined the fun, allowing children to gently brush his snowy white mane. The afternoon passed like a beautiful dream. Far away, inside the magnificent palace of Goldhaven, Lady Celeste admired her new surroundings. Everything was grand. Golden staircases curved toward crystal balconies. Silk curtains fluttered beside enormous windows. Servants bowed wherever she walked. Prince Adrian greeted her politely. "I hope you are comfortable here." Celeste smiled proudly. "Very much." Yet she quickly noticed something unexpected. Although Adrian possessed magical abilities, they were modest. He could create glowing lights in his hands. He could move small objects through the air. He could heal tiny cuts. But stories claiming he was one of the greatest magicians in the world had clearly been exaggerated. Celeste frowned. "That's all." Adrian looked confused. "My abilities. They're useful. But not extraordinary." Celeste forced a smile. Inside, disappointment quietly grew. Back in Silver Vale, Lady Morgana received letters describing Elena's peaceful new life. She laughed. "So, our princess now gathers vegetables." Another letter arrived. It described how villagers loved Rowan and Elena, how children visited their home every afternoon, how people called their cottage the House of Kindness. Morgana crumpled the letter. "I don't understand. Why are they happy?" One peaceful evening, Rowan and Elena sat together outside the cottage watching the sunset. The sky glowed with brilliant shades of gold, crimson, and violet. Fireflies floated through the garden like tiny stars. Elena looked toward the forest. "Do you ever wish for a larger house?" Rowan thought carefully. "Sometimes." She smiled. "What would you add?" He laughed. "A bigger table. So more neighbors could visit." She smiled warmly. "I was expecting something much grander." Rowan shook his head. "I already have everything I prayed for." His words filled Elena's eyes with quiet tears. Not tears of sadness, but gratitude. As darkness gently covered the forest, strange things began happening. A family of deer quietly entered the garden. Instead of running away, they calmly approached Rowan. Tiny rabbits emerged from the bushes. Owls perched silently above the cottage roof. Dozens of colorful birds gathered in the nearby trees. Even wild foxes appeared at the edge of the clearing. Elena watched in amazement. "They're not afraid of you." Rowan looked equally surprised. "I've never seen anything like this." Snow gently walked toward the animals. None of them showed fear. The entire forest seemed unusually peaceful. Hidden high among the ancient trees, the mysterious old woman observed everything with a gentle smile. "The forest remembers." She whispered. "It always remembers." Later that night, after Elena had fallen asleep, Rowan stepped outside beneath the countless stars. He held the mysterious silver crystal in his hand. It glowed faintly. For the briefest moment, golden symbols appeared beneath his feet. The nearby flowers slowly turned toward him, though there was no breeze. The great oak tree shimmered with a soft silver light. Deep beneath the mountains, ancient magical seals pulsed once more. One by one, stone statues of forgotten guardians opened their glowing eyes. Not fully awake, only watching, waiting. The ancient power sleeping within Rowan had sensed something. Far beyond the northern mountains, hidden inside a fortress carved from black stone, a pair of crimson eyes slowly opened in the darkness. A deep voice echoed through the ancient halls. The Guardian has begun to stir. The shadows trembled. For thousands of years, darkness had slept peacefully. Now, it had finally begun to awaken. Unaware of the growing danger, Rowan quietly returned inside the little cottage. Elena was already asleep, her face peaceful in the soft candlelight. Rowan smiled gently, placed the silver crystal upon the wooden table, and lay beside her. Outside, the forest whispered beneath the stars. The animals kept silent watch. And somewhere in the unseen depths of the world, fate slowly gathered its strength, preparing for the day when the humble warrior's forgotten magic would awaken and forever change the destiny of every kingdom. Several peaceful weeks passed after Rowan and Elena began their new life together. Summer slowly spread across the kingdom of Silver Vale. The fields shimmered like waves of emerald silk beneath the warm sunshine. Orchards overflowed with ripe apples, golden pears, and sweet cherries. Colorful wildflowers covered the meadows, while butterflies floated lazily from blossom to blossom. Several peaceful weeks passed after Rowan and Elena began their new life together. Summer slowly spread across the kingdom of Silver Vale. The fields shimmered like waves of emerald silk beneath the warm sunshine. Orchards overflowed with ripe apples, golden pears, and sweet cherries. Colorful wildflowers covered the meadows, while butterflies floated lazily from blossom to blossom. Music echoed through every village. Children laughed as they decorated streets with ribbons and flowers. Bakers prepared honey cakes, berry pies, and warm loaves of fresh bread. Traveling musicians tuned their violins beneath ancient oak trees. It was the happiest week of the year. Early one morning, a cheerful knock sounded on Rowan and Elena's cottage door. One little girl stepped forward holding a hand-painted wooden sign. It read, "Guests of honor." Rowan looked surprised. "You've made a mistake." The elder laughed.
No mistake.
"You and Elena have brought hope to this village. Every home has grown happier since you arrived." Elena's eyes filled with quiet gratitude. "We've done nothing extraordinary." The old elder smiled gently. One little girl stepped forward holding a hand-painted wooden sign. It read, "Guests of honor." Rowan looked surprised. "You've made a mistake." The elder laughed.
No mistake.
"You and Elena have brought hope to this village. Every home has grown happier since you arrived." Elena's eyes filled with quiet gratitude. "We've done nothing extraordinary." The old elder smiled gently. Sometimes kindness is the greatest miracle. Preparations soon filled the village with excitement. Women wove flower crowns from daisies and lavender. Children painted wooden lanterns in bright colors. The blacksmith built a large iron fire bowl for the evening celebration. Even Rowan joined the preparations. He spent several days repairing old festival stalls without accepting payment. Meanwhile, Elena helped the village children decorate the town square with handmade ribbons. Whenever a ribbon became tangled, everyone laughed together. The entire village felt like one enormous family. On the morning of the festival, Rowan awoke before sunrise. Outside, the sky glowed with soft shades of pink and gold. He quietly walked into the garden carrying the mysterious silver crystal. As the first rays of sunlight touched its surface, the crystal shimmered. A gentle beam of silver light stretched toward the eastern mountains. It lasted only a heartbeat. Then it disappeared. Rowan frowned. Strange. Snow lifted his head nervously. The birds suddenly became silent. Then, everything returned to normal. Rowan slipped the crystal back into his pocket. I suppose I imagined it. Hidden among the trees, unseen eyes watched him. By afternoon, the festival of the first harvest had begun. The village square overflowed with cheerful voices. Colorful banners fluttered between wooden buildings. Musicians filled the air with joyful melodies played on flutes, harps, and violins. Children raced through the streets carrying tiny paper windmills. The scent of roasted corn, sweet honey, cinnamon pastries, and fresh apples drifted through the warm summer air. Elena wandered happily from stall to stall. She admired handmade blankets. She tasted homemade strawberry jam. She complimented every artist she met. The villagers adored her. Nearby, Rowan entered the annual archery contest. Several experienced hunters laughed quietly. The poor warrior thinks he can compete. Another smiled. He'll be lucky to hit the target. Rowan simply smiled politely. When his turn arrived, he lifted an old wooden bow borrowed from the village carpenter. He closed his eyes for one slow breath, then released. The arrow flew silently through the air. It struck the very center of the target. A perfect shot. The crowd applauded. The hunters looked at one another in surprise. Rowan scratched the back of his head. I think the wind helped. Everyone laughed warmly. Later, the children begged Rowan to join the tug-of-war competition. At first he refused. I'm not nearly strong enough. The children insisted. You have to. Finally, Rowan agreed. To everyone's surprise, his team easily defeated the strongest farmers in the village. Rowan looked even more shocked than anyone else. I don't know how that happened. The blacksmith laughed loudly. Perhaps you've been chopping more firewood than we realized. Rowan laughed along with everyone else. Yet deep inside, something felt different. He hadn't pulled unusually hard. It had almost seemed effortless. As evening approached, music filled the village square. Lanterns illuminated every street. Couples danced beneath strings of glowing lights. To everyone's surprise, his team easily defeated the strongest farmers in the village. Rowan looked even more shocked than anyone else. I don't know how that happened. The blacksmith laughed loudly. Perhaps you've been chopping more firewood than we realized. Rowan laughed along with everyone else. Yet deep inside, something felt different. He hadn't pulled unusually hard. It had almost seemed effortless. As evening approached, music filled the village square. Lanterns illuminated every street. Couples danced beneath strings of glowing lights. Hidden at the edge of the celebration, the mysterious old woman watched with peaceful eyes. The heart awakens before the power. She whispered, "And that is how it must be." Far away, inside the dark fortress beyond the northern mountains, the celebration meant nothing. A towering chamber carved from black stone echoed with silence. Ancient braziers burned with crimson flames. Shadowy figures wearing dark armor knelt before a massive obsidian throne. Upon that throne sat a mysterious figure cloaked entirely in darkness. Only two glowing crimson eyes could be seen beneath the hood. A cold voice broke the silence. Report. One armored servant bowed deeply. My lord. A strange magical pulse has appeared once again. It came from Silver Vale. The crimson eyes narrowed. The guardian. We are uncertain. The ruler slowly stood. Dark energy flowed like smoke around his robes. For thousands of years we have searched. If the guardian truly lives, he must never awaken. The chamber trembled. Far below the fortress, countless stone doors slowly cracked open. Deep within those forgotten prisons, Creatures with glowing red eyes awakened one by one. Not yet released. Only waiting. Back in Silver Vale, the festival reached its final celebration. The entire village gathered around the enormous bonfire. Golden sparks floated upward into the night sky. The elder spoke warmly. This year, we celebrate not only a wonderful harvest, but also two people who reminded us that happiness is not measured by wealth. Everyone turned toward Rowan and Elena. The crowd applauded. Elena blushed. Rowan looked down shyly. The children surrounded them with laughter and hugs. For a moment, everything felt perfect. Late that night, after the festival had ended, Rowan and Elena slowly walked home beneath a sky filled with brilliant stars. The forest was unusually quiet. Snow suddenly stopped walking. His ears stood alert. Rowan noticed it immediately. "What is it, boy?" A cool breeze swept through the trees. Then, far in the distance, a deep, echoing roar rolled across the mountains. It was unlike any animal Rowan had ever heard. The sound lasted only a few seconds. Then silence returned. Elena looked toward the dark forest. "Did you hear that?" Rowan nodded slowly. "Yes." Snow refused to move. High above them, dozens of birds suddenly burst from the trees, flying desperately into the night. Even the wind seemed uneasy. Hidden within the darkness, the mysterious old woman closed her eyes. "The first servants of the Shadow King have awakened." She whispered sadly, "The peaceful days are coming to an end." Far beneath Rowan's feet, buried deep within the ancient earth, the silver crystal resting in his pocket glowed once more. For only a single heartbeat, a faint golden symbol appeared upon his hand. Then it vanished before anyone could see it. The sleeping guardian had taken another step toward awakening. And somewhere beyond the mountains, darkness smiled. Autumn arrived quietly in the kingdom of Silver Vale. The leaves of the whispering forest slowly turned shades of crimson, amber, and gold. Cool breezes carried the scent of pine and fallen leaves across the countryside. Every morning, a gentle mist floated above the rivers before disappearing beneath the warm embrace of the rising sun. Life in Rowan and Elena's little cottage remained peaceful. Every dawn began the same way. Rowan gathered fresh water from the stream while Elena baked warm bread in the small stone oven. Snow wandered through the flower garden, greeting the birds that had become regular visitors. Their simple life filled each day with quiet happiness. Neither of them knew that the peaceful season was about to change forever. One crisp morning, a frightened shepherd hurried into the village square. His face was pale. His clothes were torn by branches. He could barely catch his breath. "The sheep. They are gone." The villagers gathered around him. "What happened?" The shepherd pointed toward the distant forest. "I heard terrible growls. I've never heard anything like them. When I looked back, there were glowing red eyes watching from the trees." A nervous silence spread through the crowd. Some believed wolves had returned. Others whispered about ancient spirits that lived deep inside the whispering forest. The village elder looked troubled. "We should remain cautious." That afternoon, several hunters searched the forest. Rowan volunteered to help. Elena gently held his hand before he left. "Please be careful." Rowan smiled reassuringly. "I'll only look around. I'll be home before sunset." She nodded. "I'll be waiting." Snow walked faithfully beside Rowan as they entered the forest. The colorful autumn leaves crunched softly beneath their feet. Sunlight filtered through towering oak trees. Everything appeared peaceful. Almost too peaceful. Not a single bird sang. Several hours passed without finding anything unusual. The hunters prepared to return. Then Snow suddenly stopped. His ears stood upright. He stared toward a dense patch of trees. Rowan noticed immediately. "What is it?" Snow snorted nervously. A strange silence settled across the forest. Even the wind seemed to disappear. Then, a deep growl echoed through the trees. One hunter whispered, "Did you hear that?" Everyone slowly reached for their weapons. Another growl. Closer this time. Branches snapped somewhere ahead. Suddenly, a frightened deer burst from the bushes and raced past them.
Moments later.
A massive black creature emerged from the shadows. It resembled a wolf. But no ordinary wolf had glowing crimson eyes. Its fur shimmered like living smoke. Dark mist curled around its enormous body. Long claws dug into the earth. The hunters froze. "What is that?" No one had an answer. The beast let out a terrifying roar. Without warning, it charged. The hunters scattered in every direction. One man stumbled over a fallen log. The shadow beast leaped toward him. Before anyone else could react, Rowan sprinted forward. With a powerful swing of his old sword, he struck the creature across its shoulder. The beast roared in pain. Instead of blood, dark smoke poured from the wound. It quickly disappeared. The creature showed no sign of injury. Its glowing eyes locked onto Rowan. For a brief moment, the world became strangely quiet. Deep inside Rowan's pocket, the silver crystal grew warm. A faint pulse of light spread beneath his clothes. The beast suddenly hesitated. It stepped backward. Its fierce expression changed into something unexpected. Fear. The enormous creature slowly retreated into the darkness. Within seconds, it had vanished. Only drifting black mist remained. The hunters stared at Rowan in disbelief. "You frightened it away." Rowan looked equally confused. "I don't know how." He glanced toward his pocket. The crystal had stopped glowing. As evening approached, Rowan returned safely to the village. Everyone gathered to hear what had happened. The hunters described the terrifying creature. The villagers became frightened. The elder frowned deeply. "My grandfather once spoke of shadow beasts. They belonged to an ancient darkness. I believed they were only stories."
Elena quietly listened.
She noticed Rowan looked unusually thoughtful. After the meeting, they walk home together beneath the fading evening sky. "You aren't telling me everything," she said gently. Rowan sighed. "The crystal. It became warm. And the beast. It looked afraid of me." Elena looked surprised. "Afraid?" Rowan nodded. "It was only for a second. But I felt something. As though—" He searched for the right words. "Something inside me answered it." Neither of them understood what that meant. That night, heavy clouds covered the stars. Rain began falling softly upon the cottage roof. Unable to sleep, Rowan stepped outside. The forest looked different beneath the rain. Darker. Older. He held the silver crystal in his hand. Its glow returned, brighter than ever before. Suddenly, the rain around him seemed to freeze in midair. Tiny droplets floated like countless shining diamonds. The wind stopped. Time itself appeared to stand still. Before Rowan stood the mysterious old woman. Except, she no longer looked old. Her back was straight. Her silver hair flowed like moonlight. Her eyes shone with ancient wisdom. She seemed almost timeless. Rowan stared in amazement.
You.
She smiled gently. My true appearance. I've hidden it for many years. Who are you? She looked toward the silent forest. My name has been forgotten. But long ago, I was called Lysra. I was the last keeper of the guardians. Rowan remained speechless. Lysra continued. 4 centuries. I have waited for the final guardian to awaken. Rowan slowly shook his head. You're mistaken. I'm only a poor warrior. She smiled kindly.
No.
You are much more. She gently touched the silver crystal. Ancient golden runes appeared in the air around them. The trees glowed softly. The earth itself seemed alive. This crystal does not give you power. It protects the power already sleeping within you. Rowan looked down at his hands. They're just ordinary hands. For now. Lysra whispered. When darkness fully returns, the world itself will awaken your true strength. Far away, within the Black Fortress, the Shadow King stood before an enormous mirror made from polished obsidian. Instead of reflecting his own face, the mirror showed Rowan standing beneath the glowing trees. The Shadow King's crimson eyes narrowed. So, the Guardian has been found. His voice echoed through the endless darkness. He slowly raised one hand. Send the shadow beasts. Let them test him. If he truly carries the ancient light, he will not remain hidden for long. Dozens of dark-armored commanders knelt. As you command. Across the northern mountains, the prisons beneath the fortress opened one after another. Hundreds of glowing red eyes slowly opened within the darkness. Back in Silver Vale, time suddenly began moving again. The floating raindrops fell to the ground. The wind returned. The glowing runes vanished. Lysra stepped backward into the forest. Before disappearing, she smiled one last time. Tell no one. Not yet. The world still believes the Guardians are only legends. Rowan nodded slowly. I promise. She disappeared into the rain. Rowan stood alone beneath the stormy sky. His hand rested over the silver crystal. For the first time, he no longer believed his strange encounters were accidents. Somewhere deep within his soul, something ancient had begun to stir. And far beyond the mountains, an army of darkness had begun its march toward Silver Vale, carrying with it a war that had been sleeping for 1,000 years. A cold wind swept across the kingdom of Silver Vale. Only a few days had passed since Rowan's encounter with the Shadow Beast, but the peaceful atmosphere of the countryside had begun to change. The birds no longer sang as loudly at dawn. Wild animals avoided the forest trails. Even the villagers spoke in quieter voices, as if the wind itself carried unseen danger. The whispering forest had become strangely silent. One morning, Rowan was repairing the wooden bridge that crossed the village stream. Several children watched him from nearby. One little boy smiled. When I grow up, I want to be brave like you. Rowan laughed softly. Bravery isn't about fighting. It's about protecting people. The children nodded, though they didn't fully understand. Nearby, Elena handed fresh bread to an elderly traveler passing through the village. Kindness came naturally to her. Wherever she went, hope seemed to follow. The villagers often whispered, "Our princess has brought light to this village." As the sun climbed higher into the sky, a young messenger rode into the village at full speed. His horse was covered in sweat. He nearly fell as he climbed down. The eastern farms. He gasped. They are under attack. The villagers rushed toward him. What happened? They came from the forest. Dark creatures. They destroyed everything. They're heading this way. Fear spread instantly through the crowd. Parents gathered their children. Farmers hurried to secure their animals. The village elder looked toward Rowan. We don't have soldiers. Rowan looked around at the frightened faces. Then he quietly nodded. We'll protect the village. Within minutes, every able-bodied villager gathered in the square. Some carried old hunting bows. Others held farming tools. The blacksmith distributed every sword and shield he had. There were no professional soldiers, only ordinary people defending their homes. Rowan stood before them. His old sword rested quietly in his hands. I won't ask anyone to risk their lives. If you have family, protect them. Several villagers stepped forward anyway. The blacksmith smiled. You've protected us for years. Now it's our turn to stand beside you. One by one, every villager remained. No one walked away. Rowan's heart filled with pride. Meanwhile, Elena helped lead the children, elderly villagers, and injured people toward the old stone chapel on the hill. Its thick walls offered the safest shelter in the village. The frightened children clung to her hands. Will everything be all right? One little girl asked. Elena smiled gently, though worry filled her heart. Rowan promised to protect us. And he always keeps his promises. The children smiled. Her calm voice gave them courage. Deep within the whispering forest, something moved. Dozens of glowing crimson eyes appeared between the trees. Dark mist rolled across the forest floor. One by one, shadow beasts emerged from the darkness. Not one. Not two. Nearly 20. Each creature looked different. Some resembled enormous wolves. Others walked like towering bears. Several possessed long claws and twisted horns. Their bodies were formed from living shadow. Their eyes burned like crimson fire. Slowly, they marched toward the village. Snow suddenly neighed loudly. Rowan turned toward the forest. They are here. The ground began to tremble. Dark birds burst into the sky. Branches cracked. Then, the first shadow beast leaped from the trees. It landed with a thunderous roar. Behind it came another. Then another. Soon the entire forest edge overflowed with monstrous creatures. The villagers tightened their grip on their weapons. Some trembled. But no one fled. The battle began. Hunters released a rain of arrows. The arrows struck the beasts, only to pass through clouds of dark smoke. The creatures barely slowed. Farmers swung axes. Blacksmiths raised heavy hammers. Rowan charged first. His sword flashed through the air. One beast stumbled backward. Another lunged toward him. He rolled beneath its claws and struck again. Still, the monsters kept coming. They won't stay down. Someone shouted. Fear spread quickly. One enormous beast crashed through the village fence. It charged directly toward the chapel where Elena and the children had taken shelter. Rowan saw it. His heart stopped. Elena! Without thinking, he ran faster than any human should have been able to run. In only seconds, he crossed the entire battlefield. Even Rowan didn't understand how. He placed himself between the beast and the chapel. The creature raised its massive claw. Rowan lifted his old sword. The claw struck. A deafening sound echoed across the valley. Instead of breaking, the sword burst into brilliant golden light. Ancient runes spread across the blade like flowing rivers. The silver crystal in Rowan's pocket exploded with radiant light. The entire battlefield froze. A powerful wave of golden energy erupted from Rowan's body. The wind roared. Leaves swirled into the sky. The clouds above parted. Every shadow beast stepped backward. For the first time, true fear filled their glowing eyes. Golden light surrounded Rowan. His worn leather armor transformed into magnificent silver armor engraved with ancient symbols. A flowing white cloak shimmered behind him. His ordinary sword became a radiant blade of pure light. Golden markings appeared along his arms. His eyes glowed softly like the morning sun. The villagers stared in complete silence. Even Rowan looked down at himself in disbelief. What is happening? Deep within his heart, a forgotten voice echoed. Guardian of light. The time has come. The nearest shadow beast roared and charged again. This time, Rowan instinctively raised his glowing sword. One graceful strike. A beam of golden light swept across the battlefield. The shadow beast dissolved into thousands of tiny sparks. Gone. Completely gone. The remaining creatures hesitated. Then, every shadow beast turned and fled back toward the forest. Within moments, the battlefield became silent. Only drifting golden light remained. No one spoke. The villagers slowly lowered their weapons. The blacksmith whispered, "Did we just witness a miracle?" The village elder fell to one knee. Tears filled his eyes. The old legends were true. One graceful strike. A beam of golden light swept across the battlefield. The shadow beast dissolved into thousands of tiny sparks. Gone. Completely gone. The remaining creatures hesitated. Then, every shadow beast turned and fled back toward the forest. Within moments, the battlefield became silent. Only drifting golden light remained. No one spoke. The villagers slowly lowered their weapons. The blacksmith whispered, "Did we just witness a miracle?" The village elder fell to one knee. Tears filled his eyes. The old legends were true. The guardian has returned. Rowan quickly shook his head. "I'm still Rowan."
Im Noaru.
The elder smiled. "Exactly. That's why you were chosen." The golden armor slowly faded. The glowing sword returned to its old worn appearance. The magical light disappeared. Rowan collapsed to one knee, exhausted. Elena rushed toward him. "Are you hurt?" Rowan smiled weakly. "I don't think so." She gently embraced him. "I'm just glad you're safe." The villagers surrounded them. Some laughed. Some cried. Children hugged Rowan's legs. Snow proudly stood beside him, gently nudging his shoulder. Far away, inside the black fortress, the Shadow King watched everything through his obsidian mirror. The golden light reflected across the dark chamber. His crimson eyes narrowed. "So, it is true. The Guardian lives." For the first time in centuries, the Shadow King smiled. Not with happiness, but anticipation. Excellent. A worthy opponent. He slowly turned toward his generals. "Prepare the demon lords. This battle has only just begun." Deep beneath the fortress, ancient chains shattered. Massive stone doors slowly opened. Dark laughter echoed through endless caverns. Something far more dangerous than the shadow beasts had awakened. Back in Silver Vale, night slowly covered the quiet village. The stars shone brighter than ever before. The people celebrated their survival. Songs filled the streets. Children danced around glowing bonfires. Yet Rowan sat quietly outside his cottage. He looked at his hands. The golden markings had disappeared. Only the silver crystal remained. Lysra stepped silently from the forest. She smiled proudly. "You have taken your first step." Rowan looked toward the stars. "I still don't understand any of this." "You will," she answered gently. "But tonight, the world has remembered its guardian." Far above them, a single golden star blazed brighter than all the others. It seemed to watch over Rowan, Elena, and the peaceful village. But beyond the northern mountains, dark clouds continued to gather. The first battle had ended. The true war was only beginning. The morning after the battle was unusually quiet. Soft golden sunlight spread across the rooftops of Silver Vale, but no cheerful songs echoed from the birds. A gentle mist rested over the fields, and the villagers moved slowly through the streets, still trying to understand what they had witnessed the day before. The shadow beasts were gone. The village had survived. But nothing would ever be the same again. Outside his cottage, Rowan sat alone beneath the old oak tree. His worn sword rested across his knees. The silver crystal lay quietly in his hand. He stared at it for a long time. "I defeated them," he whispered. "But how?" The crystal remained silent. Its surface reflected only the morning sky. Snow wandered over and gently nudged Rowan's shoulder. Rowan smiled faintly and scratched the horse behind the ears. "I wish you could explain everything." Snow gave a soft neigh, as if trying. Inside the cottage, Elena prepared breakfast. Fresh bread baked in the small stone oven. The comforting smell filled every corner of their tiny home. She watched Rowan through the window. His shoulders looked heavier than before. Not because of the battle. Because of the questions. She quietly carried 2 wooden cups of warm tea outside. Without saying anything, she sat beside him. Sometimes, silence was the greatest comfort. After several peaceful moments, Rowan finally spoke. "What if that power changes me?" Elena looked at him with gentle eyes. "It already has." Rowan lowered his head. "I knew it." She smiled. "It has made you even kinder." His worried expression slowly faded. "You never see the worst in people." "I choose to see the best," she replied softly. Later that morning, the village elder called everyone together in the square. People gathered quietly. Many still looked toward Rowan with amazement. The elder stepped forward. 4 generations. Our ancestors spoke of the guardian. We believed those stories were only legends. He turned toward Rowan. But yesterday, we witnessed the impossible. The villagers applauded. Some bowed respectfully. Rowan quickly raised his hands. "Please. I'm still the same person. I still repair fences. I still fetch water. I still burn the bread sometimes." Laughter spread across the crowd. The tension disappeared. The villagers smiled once again. To them, Rowan had not become greater. He had simply become even more himself. As the celebration ended, Lysra quietly appeared beneath the ancient oak tree outside the village. Only Rowan noticed her. She motioned for him to follow. Together, they walked into the whispering forest. The deeper they traveled, the quieter the forest became. Eventually, they reached a hidden clearing Rowan had never seen before. At its center stood an enormous circle of ancient standing stones. Each stone was covered with glowing golden runes. Vines and moss had hidden them for centuries. Yet the moment Rowan stepped inside the circle, Every rune began shining brightly. The earth trembled softly. The wind stopped. Lysra smiled. They remember you. Rowan looked around in wonder. What is this place? The sanctuary of the guardians. She answered. It has slept for 1,000 years. As Rowan touched one of the glowing stones, visions suddenly filled his mind. He saw enormous kingdoms stretching across the world. He saw shining cities floating among the clouds. He saw oceans glowing beneath silver moons. Then, he saw darkness, endless armies marching across the land, mountains collapsing beneath terrible battles, dragons soaring through skies filled with fire. At the center of it all, a warrior wearing armor identical to Rowan's. His sword shone brighter than the sun. Thousands stood behind him. The armies of darkness feared his name. Then the vision changed. The guardian placed the silver crystal into a stone altar. His light slowly faded. The ancient hero closed his eyes, and the entire world fell silent. The vision ended. Rowan stumbled backward, breathing heavily. Who was he? Lysra lowered her head. The first guardian. The greatest protector our world has ever known. Rowan looked down at his own hands. Am I supposed to become him? Lysra gently shook her head.
No.
You are not here to become the first guardian. You are here to become the last. Rowan remained silent. The power chooses no kings.
No nobles. No wealthy rulers.
It chooses only those whose hearts remain pure. She smiled warmly. That is why it chose a poor warrior. Meanwhile, far away in the kingdom of Goldhaven, Lady Celeste grew increasingly frustrated. The luxurious palace no longer impressed her. Prince Adrian treated everyone with kindness. His servants respected him. The people loved him. Yet Celeste found little happiness. One afternoon she watched Prince Adrian practicing magic in the royal gardens. Tiny glowing lights floated above his hands. Flowers bloomed wherever he walked. Children applauded happily. Celeste sighed. I expected greatness. Adrian smiled gently. There are many kinds of greatness. She simply walked away. Deep inside, jealousy quietly grew. Several days later, Lady Morgana received news from Silvervale. The messenger bowed deeply. My lady, it is said that Rowan defeated monsters made of living shadow. Morgana laughed. Nonsense. The villagers are telling fairy tales. The messenger hesitated. There were hundreds of witnesses. Morgana's smile slowly disappeared. If those stories are true, she whispered, then I made a terrible mistake. For the first time, fear entered her heart. As evening fell, Rowan and Lysra climbed a quiet hill overlooking the valley. The stars slowly appeared above them. Lysra pointed toward the northern mountains. Beyond those peaks, the Shadow King prepares for war. Rowan frowned. How strong is he? Lysra remained silent for several moments. Finally, she answered honestly, far stronger than you. Rowan nodded. I expected that. But, she continued, he fears one thing. The fully awakened guardian. Rowan looked toward the silver crystal. When will that happen? Lysra's expression became serious. When your heart, your courage, and your sacrifice become one. That same night, deep beneath the Black Fortress, the Shadow King entered an enormous underground chamber. Hundreds of towering stone statues stood silently around him. Each held a massive weapon. Each wore ancient armor. The Shadow King placed one hand upon the nearest statue. Dark energy flowed into the stone. Cracks spread across its body. Its eyes slowly opened. Then another statue awakened. And another. And another. One by one, the ancient demon lords returned to life. The chamber shook violently. Their voices echoed through the endless darkness. The Shadow King smiled. Rise. The Guardian has awakened. And soon, the world will belong to Shadow. Back in Silver Vale, Rowan and Elena stood together outside their little cottage. The village had fallen asleep. Fireflies drifted through the flower garden. Snow rested peacefully beneath the old oak tree. Elena gently held Rowan's hand. You've been quiet today. He smiled softly. I've learned something. What? He looked toward the peaceful village. I finally understand why I was chosen. Elena squeezed his hand. Tell me. Rowan looked at the homes glowing warmly beneath the stars. I wasn't chosen because I'm the strongest. I was chosen because these people are worth protecting. Elena smiled proudly. And that, she whispered, is exactly why the Guardian chose you. Above them, the golden star shone brighter than ever. Its light stretched across the sleeping kingdom like a silent promise. Far beyond the mountains, the demon lords marched beneath the cover of darkness. The next battle would not be fought for a single village. It would decide the fate of the entire world. Several peaceful days passed after Rowan's visit to the sanctuary of the Guardians. The village slowly returned to its ordinary rhythm. Children played beside the stream again. Farmers harvested the last crops before winter. The laughter that had disappeared after the battle gradually returned. Yet Rowan knew the peace would not last. Every evening, he climbed the hill overlooking Silver Vale and watched the distant northern mountains. Dark clouds never seemed to leave their peaks. Something waited there. Something ancient. Something patient. One chilly morning, Lysra arrived at the cottage carrying a weathered leather map. She carefully spread it across Rowan's wooden table. The map was unlike any Rowan had ever seen. Instead of ordinary ink, glowing golden lines slowly appeared across its surface. Ancient kingdoms, forgotten forests, floating islands, and towering mountains shimmered before their eyes. Elena leaned closer. I've never seen a map like this. Lysra nodded. It reveals only what the Guardian is meant to find. As Rowan placed his hand upon the map, several locations began glowing brightly. Lysra pointed toward the first glowing symbol, the Temple of Dawn. It lies beyond the Crystal Hills. Rowan studied the map. What is there? The first Guardian left behind 4 sacred relics. She answered quietly, only together can they awaken your full power. Elena looked concerned. What are these relics? Lysra smiled. The Sword of Dawn. The Shield of Stars. The Crown of Wisdom. And the Heart Crystal. She paused. The silver crystal you carry is only the key. It cannot awaken the relics by itself. A quiet silence filled the cottage. Finally Rowan asked, if I don't find them? Lysra looked toward the north. The Shadow King will. No one spoke. The room suddenly felt much colder. That afternoon, Rowan walked alone through the village. He greeted every farmer, helped repair an old wagon, played with the children beside the river, accepted fresh bread from the baker. Everything looked exactly as it always had, which somehow made leaving even harder. Near sunset, The village elder called everyone together beneath the great oak tree. Word had spread quickly. The villagers already knew. Rowan would soon leave. The elder stepped forward carrying a beautifully crafted wooden box. Inside rested a polished leather compass. Its needle shimmered with silver light. "This belonged to my grandfather," he said. "He once believed the guardian would return. I think he was right." He placed the compass into Rowan's hands. "It will always guide you toward hope." Rowan bowed respectfully. "I'll bring it home." Next came the village blacksmith. He carried Rowan's old sword. Except it no longer looked worn. The blade had been carefully repaired. The handle wrapped in fresh leather. Tiny silver symbols had been engraved near the guard. "I couldn't make it magical," the blacksmith admitted, "but I could make it worthy." Rowan smiled. "It's perfect." Children soon surrounded him. One little girl handed Rowan a tiny cloth doll she had sewn herself. "So you won't get lonely." Another boy gave him smooth stones collected from the river. "For good luck." Rowan accepted every gift with gratitude. Elena quietly watched from beneath the old oak tree. Her heart felt both proud and heavy. That evening, Rowan and Elena walked through the flower garden one final time before the journey. Fireflies danced among the blossoms. The stars slowly appeared overhead. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, Elena broke the silence. "I'm afraid." Rowan nodded. "So am I." She looked surprised. "I thought guardians weren't supposed to be afraid." He smiled softly. "Only foolish people never feel fear. Courage means walking forward anyway." She gently squeezed his hand. "I'll remember that." Later that night, Lysra stood alone beneath the ancient oak tree. She quietly raised a silver staff. Ancient golden circles of magic appeared beneath the ground. The roots of the enormous tree began glowing. A hidden stone staircase slowly emerged from the earth. Rowan stared in amazement. "I've lived here my entire life. I never knew." Lysra smiled. "Only guardians can open the hidden vault." Together they descended beneath the tree. Torchlight illuminated walls covered with ancient paintings. Every mural showed guardians protecting kingdoms across countless centuries. At the end of the chamber stood a magnificent white horse statue carved from crystal. As Rowan approached, the statue cracked. Brilliant light burst from within. The crystal shell shattered into thousands of glowing fragments. Standing before Rowan was an enormous horse, pure white. Its silver mane shimmered like moonlight. Its eyes glowed with gentle golden light. Snow quietly walked forward. The two horses touched noses. Lysra smiled. "This is Loomis, the Guardian's first companion." The magical horse bowed before Rowan. Rowan slowly reached out his hand. Loomis lowered his head, accepting him. At sunrise the following morning, the entire village gathered to say goodbye. No one smiled. No one cried loudly. The silence itself spoke of love. The baker packed fresh bread. The widow gave Rowan a warm wool blanket. The children hugged Elena tightly. Snow stood proudly beside Loomis. The two magnificent horses waited patiently. The village elder raised his walking staff. "May the light always guide you." The villagers repeated together, "May the light always guide you." Just as Rowan prepared to leave, King Alaric arrived unexpectedly with a small group of royal guards. Everyone bowed. The king stepped down from his horse. He smiled warmly. "I thought it would be wrong to let our greatest protector leave without saying farewell." Rowan looked embarrassed. I'm hardly that. King Alaric laughed. That's exactly why you are. He removed a silver pendant from around his neck. It bore the ancient symbol of Silver Vale. My father gave this to me. Now I give it to the Guardian. Rowan accepted it with great respect. I'll protect our kingdom. The king placed a hand on his shoulder. I know. Far away, inside the Black Fortress, the Shadow King watched through the obsidian mirror. He saw Rowan preparing for his journey. A cruel smile spread across his face. So, the hunt begins. He turned toward 4 towering demon lords. One wore armor of burning obsidian. Another possessed enormous crimson wings. A third carried a giant black axe. The last was wrapped entirely in living shadows. Do not kill him. The Shadow King ordered. Not yet. Break his spirit. Destroy his hope. Make the Guardian doubt himself. The demon lords bowed. As you command. The morning sun climbed above the mountains. Rowan mounted Loomis. Elena rode beside him on snow. Lysra walked quietly ahead. The village watched until the 3 travelers disappeared beyond the crystal hills. No one knew how long the journey would last. No one knew what dangers waited ahead. But every heart in Silver Vale carried the same hope. Their humble warrior was no longer simply protecting one village. He was carrying the hopes of the entire world. As Rowan looked back one final time, he saw the little cottage in the distance. Smoke curled gently from its chimney. The flower garden shimmered beneath the morning sun. He smiled. No matter how far I travel, I'll come home. With that promise in his heart, the Guardian rode toward the rising sun. His greatest adventure had finally begun. The first rays of sunrise painted the crystal hills in shades of gold and rose. Rowan, Elena, Lysra, Loomis, and Snow had been traveling for 3 days. The peaceful fields of Silvervale were now far behind them, replaced by rolling hills covered in sparkling crystals that caught the morning light like countless tiny stars. Every step toward the Temple of Dawn carried them farther from home. Yet none of them looked back. The road became narrower as it climbed higher into the mountains. Crystal formations rose from the earth like frozen waterfalls. Tiny birds with shimmering blue feathers flew between the glittering rocks, filling the air with cheerful songs. Elena smiled. I've never seen anything so beautiful. Lysra nodded. The crystal hills were once blessed by the first Guardian. Even after 1,000 years, his light still remains. Rowan quietly touched the silver crystal hanging around his neck. It felt slightly warmer than before. As they continued climbing, Loomis suddenly stopped. The magnificent white horse lifted his head toward the eastern cliffs. His golden eyes narrowed. Snow also became restless. Rowan immediately understood. Someone's watching us. The wind carried only silence. Nothing moved among the crystal rocks. But the feeling remained. They were not alone. By noon, the travelers reached an ancient stone bridge stretching across a deep canyon. Below, a roaring river crashed against towering cliffs. The bridge looked impossibly old. Many of its stones had cracked with age. Elena looked uncertain. Will it hold? Lysra smiled. It has carried every Guardian. It will carry this one. Rowan stepped onto the bridge first. Each footstep echoed across the canyon. Halfway across, a loud crack echoed beneath them. One section of the bridge collapsed into the river below. Massive stones disappeared into the rushing water. Elena gasped. Run! The group hurried forward. More stones crumbled behind them. Just as the final section gave way, Loomis leaped gracefully onto solid ground. Snow followed close behind. The ancient bridge collapsed completely. Only dust and broken stone remained. Rowan looked back. "We were lucky." Lysra quietly replied,
No.
"The bridge chose to protect its guardian." That evening, they camped beside a crystal lake. The water was so clear that the stars seemed to shine beneath its surface. Elena prepared a simple meal while Rowan gathered firewood. Loomis and Snow drank quietly from the lake. The peaceful silence felt comforting after the dangerous crossing. As darkness settled over the mountains, Rowan noticed strange lights floating above the water. Tiny golden orbs drifted across the lake like fireflies. "They are beautiful,"
Elena whispered.
Lysra smiled knowingly. "They are dawn spirits. They appear only when a guardian is near." One tiny spirit floated toward Rowan. It gently touched his hand. The silver crystal glowed softly. The spirit circled him once, then disappeared into the night sky. Far away, inside the black fortress, one of the demon lords stepped forward. His name was Vaka. He stood nearly 12 feet tall. His body was covered in black armor forged from volcanic stone. Glowing cracks of molten fire spread across his chest. A massive black hammer rested upon his shoulder. The Shadow King looked directly at him. "The Guardian approaches the Temple of Dawn." Vaka smiled coldly. "He will never reach it." The Shadow King raised one hand. Dark smoke gathered into a glowing black crystal. "Take this. It will awaken the temple's ancient guardian." Vaka accepted the crystal. "As you command." With a single step, he disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, Rowan awoke before sunrise. He walked quietly to the edge of the crystal lake. The surface reflected the bright morning sky. As he knelt beside the water, his reflection suddenly changed. Instead of seeing himself, he saw the first guardian. The legendary warrior stood within the reflection, wearing radiant silver armor. He smiled kindly, then raised one finger, pointing toward the eastern mountains. The vision faded instantly. The lake returned to normal. Rowan blinked in surprise. Was that real? Lysra approached from behind. "Sometimes the past guides the future." By midday, the travelers finally reached the foot of the Temple of Dawn. It was far larger than Rowan had imagined. Towering white pillars reached toward the sky. Golden vines climbed ancient marble walls. Crystal waterfalls flowed down the mountainside beside the temple. A giant staircase of polished white stone led upward. At the top stood enormous golden doors engraved with the symbol of the rising sun. Elena whispered in amazement, "It's beautiful." Lysra bowed her head respectfully. No one has entered these halls for 1,000 years. As Rowan climbed the first step, the silver crystal suddenly shone brightly. Golden runes appeared beneath his feet. The giant temple doors slowly began to open. A warm beam of sunlight poured through the entrance. Ancient bells echoed across the mountains. The Temple of Dawn had recognized its guardian. But hidden high upon a distant cliff, Vaka watched everything. His burning red eyes glowed with cruel satisfaction. He tightened his grip upon the black crystal. "Go," he whispered. Dark smoke flowed from the crystal into the mountains below. The earth began to tremble. Far beneath the temple, a pair of enormous stone eyes slowly opened. Dust fell from an ancient giant covered in vines and crystal. The temple guardian had awakened, not to welcome Rowan, but to destroy him. As the mountain shook beneath their feet, Rowan instinctively reached for his sword. The Temple of Dawn had opened its gates. Its first trial had begun. The mountain trembled beneath Rowan's feet. Dust drifted from the towering white pillars of the Temple of Dawn. Deep beneath the ancient staircase, a thunderous rumble echoed through the valley. Then, the earth split apart. A colossal stone hand emerged from the ground. It was larger than an entire house. Another hand followed. Then an enormous body rose slowly from the mountain itself. The giant stood nearly 60 feet tall. Its body was carved from ancient white stone, covered with glowing crystal veins and thick emerald vines. Its eyes burned with brilliant golden light. Yet something was wrong. Dark smoke curled from cracks across its chest. Its once pure light had become corrupted. Elena stared in amazement. "It's alive." Lysera's face grew pale.
No.
It was once a protector. Now it has been poisoned by shadow. The giant slowly turned toward Rowan. Its deep voice echoed across the mountains. "Guardian." The words sounded broken, painful, as though two voices were speaking at once. Then the darkness took control. The giant raised an enormous stone sword. "Destroy." Without warning, the temple guardian attacked. Its sword crashed into the marble staircase with tremendous force. The entire mountain shook. Rowan pulled Elena away just in time. Massive chunks of stone rolled down the mountainside. Snow and Loomis leaped to safety. The travelers narrowly escaped being crushed. Rowan drew his sword. Golden light flickered along its blade. The guardian charged again. This time Rowan met the attack. Steel struck stone. A brilliant flash echoed across the valley. The impact threw Rowan backwards several yards. He landed hard but quickly stood again. "My sword barely scratched it." Lysera called out, "Because this isn't an enemy. It's a guardian fighting against corruption." The giant roared again. Dark smoke poured from the glowing cracks across its body. Its golden eyes flashed crimson for a moment, then golden again. It was struggling, fighting something inside itself. Rowan noticed. "It doesn't want to fight." Lysera nodded. "The shadow crystal controls it." Meanwhile, hidden high upon the cliffs, Varka watched with cruel amusement. The demon lord rested his enormous hammer upon his shoulder. "Fight," he whispered. "Exhaust yourself." The black crystal in his hand pulsed with dark energy. Every pulse spread more corruption into the temple guardian. Back below, the battle continued. The giant slammed both fists into the ground. Massive crystal pillars erupted from the earth. One nearly struck Elena. Rowan rushed toward her. Before the falling crystal could hit, a glowing golden shield appeared around them. The shield formed by itself, without Rowan even thinking. The crystal shattered harmlessly against the magical barrier. Rowan looked around in surprise. "I didn't do that." Lysera smiled. The guardian's heart protects before the mind commands. The temple guardian charged once more. This time Rowan did not attack. Instead, he lowered his sword. Elena looked shocked. "Rowan, what are you doing?" He calmly answered, "It's asking for help." The giant lifted its enormous stone blade high above its head. Darkness covered half its face. Its golden eye filled with sorrow. For one brief moment, the creature hesitated. Rowan slowly walked forward. Every step echoed across the silent mountain. Lysera did not stop him. She understood. The giant's sword remained raised. Darkness screamed from within its body. Golden light struggled to break free. Rowan finally stood directly before the enormous guardian. He placed one hand upon its cracked stone leg. The silver crystal around his neck began shining brighter than ever before. Warm golden light flowed from Rowan's hand into the ancient giant. The temple guardian trembled violently. Dark smoke burst from its body. The mountain shook. The sky filled with swirling clouds. Far above, Varka frowned. What? The corruption resisted. Dark tendrils wrapped around Rowan's arm. Pain shot through his body. His knees nearly buckled. Visions flooded his mind. He saw thousands of villages burning, children crying, kingdoms falling beneath endless darkness. The Shadow King's laughter echoed through every vision. The darkness whispered, "Give up. You cannot save them." Rowan closed his eyes. Then he remembered. Elena's smile. The children of Silver Vale. The old blacksmith. The village elder. His little cottage. His family. His home. He opened his eyes again. "I won't abandon them." Golden light erupted from the silver crystal. The darkness screamed. With a deafening roar, the black smoke exploded from the temple guardian. The corruption shattered like broken glass. Golden light poured through every crack in the giant's body. The entire mountain glowed. The temple guardian slowly lowered its sword. Its eyes became completely golden once more. The enormous warrior knelt before Rowan. Its deep voice was now calm. "Guardian, you have freed me." Far above the battlefield, the black crystal in Varka's hand suddenly cracked, then shattered completely. The demon lord stepped backward.
Impossible.
He growled. No human should possess such light. His anger quickly turned into determination. So be it. I'll destroy him myself. He disappeared into the mountain shadows. The temple guardian slowly reached into its stone chest. A hidden compartment opened. Inside rested a magnificent golden sword. Its blade shimmered like the morning sun. Tiny stars seemed to dance across its surface. The hilt was wrapped in white leather. A radiant crystal rested within its guard. The giant carefully offered it to Rowan. The Sword of Dawn. It has waited for the final guardian. As Rowan wrapped his fingers around the ancient weapon, the blade burst into brilliant golden light. The mountains echoed with ancient bells. The clouds parted. Sunlight flooded the valley. The sword had accepted its new master. Lysera smiled proudly. The first sacred relic has returned. Elena looked at Rowan with joyful tears. You did it. Rowan looked down at the glowing sword. I didn't win by fighting. Lysera nodded. You won. Because you chose compassion. The temple guardian slowly stood. Its body began turning into countless golden particles. For 1,000 years, it had waited. Its duty was finally complete. Before disappearing completely, it smiled. Protect. The light. The giant dissolved into the wind. Only peaceful silence remained. Deep inside the black fortress, the Shadow King opened his eyes. He had felt the sword awaken. A slow smile appeared beneath his dark hood. So, the Guardian has claimed the first relic. He looked toward the remaining 3 glowing symbols upon an ancient stone map. Good. Now I know exactly where he is going. He turned toward the darkness behind him. Prepare the second trial. This journey is becoming interesting. As evening fell, Rowan stood at the entrance of the Temple of Dawn with the Sword of Dawn resting across his back. The setting sun reflected from its glowing blade. Loomis and Snow waited patiently beside the ancient steps.
Elena smiled.
Where do we go next? Lysra unfolded the magical map once again. A second glowing symbol slowly appeared. Far to the west, hidden within endless forests. She looked toward Rowan. Our next destination is the forest of whispering stars. Somewhere deep inside that enchanted forest rested the shield of stars. But something else was already waiting there, watching, smiling from the shadows. The morning sun rose gently over the Temple of Dawn. Golden light flowed across the ancient marble steps where Rowan, Elena, Lysra, Loomis, and Snow prepared to continue their journey. The sword of dawn rested across Rowan's back. Though its light had faded to a gentle glow, Rowan could still feel a warm energy flowing through the ancient blade. It no longer felt like a weapon. It felt like a trusted friend. Lysra unfolded the magical map once again. The glowing image had changed. The mark of the Temple of Dawn had disappeared. Now another golden symbol shimmered deep within a vast emerald forest far to the west. The forest of whispering stars, Lysra said quietly. There, the shield of stars has rested for 1,000 years. Elena looked at the map. Why hide such powerful relics? Because power without wisdom invites darkness. Lysra answered. The first guardian scattered them so no single ruler could ever misuse them. Rowan nodded. Then we should make sure they never fall into the wrong hands. For several days, the travelers followed winding mountain paths. The air gradually became warmer. The rocky cliffs gave way to endless green valleys. Wildflowers covered the hillsides like colorful blankets. Butterflies danced through the gentle breeze. For the first time in many days, the journey felt peaceful. Elena laughed as tiny blue birds landed upon Snow's back. Even Loomis seemed happier, running freely across the open fields. Rowan smiled. It almost feels like the world has forgotten the war. Lysra looked toward the distant horizon. The world hasn't. It is simply allowing us one peaceful breath. That evening, they reached a quiet village nestled beside a sparkling river. The villagers welcomed travelers warmly. An elderly woman offered fresh vegetable soup. Children gathered around Loomis in amazement. They had never seen a horse whose manner shimmered like moonlight. One little boy asked Rowan, "Are you a knight?" Rowan smiled.
No.
"I'm just someone trying to help." The boy grinned. "My father says those are the best kind." That night, music filled the village square. Families danced beneath colorful lanterns. Musicians played cheerful melodies on wooden flutes and stringed instruments. For a little while, everyone forgot about monsters and war. Even Rowan joined the dancing after Elena gently pulled him into the circle. The villagers laughed as Rowan awkwardly tried to follow the steps. Lysra watched from a nearby bench, smiling quietly. "Sometimes," she whispered, "joy is stronger than magic." Far away, the Shadow King stood silently inside the Black Fortress. Before him knelt Varka, the defeated demon lord. "My king." "I failed." The Shadow King remained calm. "You underestimated him." Varka lowered his head. "I will not fail again." The Shadow King slowly turned.
No.
"You will not face him again." Another figure stepped forward from the shadows. She was tall and graceful. Long silver-black hair flowed behind dark armor decorated with crimson roses. Unlike the other demon lords, her face showed neither anger nor cruelty, only quiet confidence. The Shadow King smiled. "Meet Lady Nysera, the mistress of illusions." She bowed elegantly. "I will bring the guardian to his knees." The next morning, Rowan's group entered the forest of whispering stars. The moment they crossed beneath the towering trees, everything changed. Sunlight filtered through glowing silver leaves. Tiny lights floated between the branches like stars. Flowers opened as they walked past. Crystal streams reflected thousands of shimmering lights. The forest felt alive.
Elena whispered.
It's like walking through a dream. Lysra nodded. It listens. So be careful what you speak. Hours passed peacefully. Then, the forest became strangely quiet. The glowing birds disappeared. The breeze stopped. Loomis suddenly halted. Snow stamped nervously. Rowan rested one hand upon the sword of dawn. We are not alone. A soft voice answered.
No.
You're not. A young woman stepped gracefully from behind a silver tree. She wore flowing white robes embroidered with tiny stars. Her silver hair shimmered in the forest light. Gentle blue eyes met Rowan's. She smiled warmly. My name is Arya. I've been waiting for you.
Elena stepped beside Rowan.
Who are you?
Arya bowed politely.
I guard the western paths. I guide travelers who lose their way. Her voice was calm, comforting, almost too perfect. Lysra quietly narrowed her eyes. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Arya offered a gentle smile. The path to the Whispering Lake is dangerous. I can guide you safely. Rowan looked toward Lysra. She remained silent. Finally she whispered, Trust your heart, not your eyes. The group followed Arya deeper into the glowing forest. As they walked, Rowan noticed something unusual. Birds refused to fly near her. Flowers bloomed everywhere, except where she stepped. There. The grass slowly turned gray, almost unnoticed. Almost. As evening approached, they reached a beautiful clearing. At its center stood a crystal lake reflecting the stars, even though the sun had not yet set. It is beautiful.
Elena whispered. Arya smiled.
Rest here tonight. You'll reach the shield tomorrow. The travelers prepared camp. Everything seemed peaceful. Yet Rowan could not sleep. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. Late that night, Rowan quietly rose from his bedroll. The forest glowed softly beneath the moonlight. He heard someone whispering. Following the sound, he walked toward the lake. There, he saw Arya standing alone. Her reflection shimmered upon the water. Then, suddenly, the reflection smiled. But Arya did not. A second later, her reflection transformed. The gentle young woman disappeared. In her place stood a warrior clad in black armor. Crimson eyes. A cruel smile. Long silver black hair. Lady Nysera, the mistress of illusions. Rowan instinctively reached for the sword of dawn. Before he could draw it, the reflection looked directly at him and smiled. My king was right. Her voice echoed across the silent lake. You truly are difficult to deceive. The reflection dissolved into rippling water. When Rowan looked up, Arya was gone. Only drifting silver leaves remained. High above the forest canopy, Lady Nysera stood upon a towering branch. Her disguise had vanished. Dark magical ribbons swirled around her. She watched Rowan with quiet amusement. Interesting. You see through illusions. She smiled softly. But can you see through your own heart? She disappeared into the shadows. The following morning, Rowan told Elena and Lysra everything. Lysra sighed. I feared as much. The forest of whispering stars is ruled by illusion. It reveals not only false enemies, but hidden fears. Elena looked around uneasily. So how do we know what's real? Lysra smiled gently. You don't. You choose what to believe. At that moment, the magical map began glowing again. A narrow golden path appeared between the ancient trees. Far ahead, something shimmered beneath the morning light. A magnificent silver shield stood upon a stone altar. The shield of stars was finally within sight. But as Rowan took his first step toward it, the forest itself changed. The trees twisted. The sky darkened. And 3 identical Elenas suddenly stood before him. Each reached out her hand. Each whispered the same words. Rowan, help me. The second trial had begun. The 3 Elenas stood silently beneath the silver trees. Each wore the same simple traveling cloak. Each had the same gentle smile. Each reached out a trembling hand toward Rowan. Please, help me. Their voices were identical. Even Snow became confused, nervously shifting from one hoof to the other. Rowan slowly looked from one Elena to the next. His hand rested on the Sword of Dawn. But he did not draw it. He remembered Lysra's words. Trust your heart, not your eyes. The first Elena stepped forward. Rowan. The others are illusions. Come with me. The second Elena shook her head. No. She's lying. The third Elena simply stood quietly. She said nothing at all, only watched him with calm, patient eyes. Lysra remained perfectly still. She did not speak. This was Rowan's trial. No one else could complete it. Rowan closed his eyes. He listened. Not to their voices, but to his memories. He remembered Elena sharing warm tea beneath the old oak tree. He remembered her comforting frightened children during the attack on Silver Vale. He remembered her smile when he doubted himself. The real Elena had never begged to be rescued. She had always stood beside him, not behind him. Rowan opened his eyes. Without hesitation, he walked toward the silent Elena, the one who had spoken no words. She smiled softly. I knew. You would remember. The other 2 Elenas instantly dissolved into clouds of silver mist. The real Elena laughed gently. I was beginning to wonder how long you'd take. Rowan smiled. I recognized your courage. The forest shimmered with golden light. A warm breeze swept through the trees. Tiny glowing stars floated down from the branches. Lysra nodded proudly. The first illusion has been broken. But before anyone could celebrate, the ground trembled. The silver leaves began swirling violently. Lady Nysera's voice echoed through the forest. Very good. But that was the easiest one. The trees stretched higher. The forest transformed around them. The peaceful woodland disappeared. Rowan suddenly found himself standing alone. The others were gone.
No Elena. No Lysara. No Loomis. No Snow.
Only endless darkness. A cold wind whispered through the empty world. Then he heard crying. Children's voices. Rowan followed the sound. Ahead stood the village of Silver Vale. But it was burning. Homes collapsed beneath black flames. The old bridge had been destroyed. The flower gardens had turned to ash. Villagers ran in terror. The sky was filled with shadow beasts. He saw the blacksmith lying injured beside his forge. The baker's shop had become a pile of burning wood. Children cried for help. Rowan's heart pounded. No, This can't be real. Then he saw Elena. She stood trapped beneath the fallen roof of their cottage. "Rowan!" she cried. "Help me!" Without thinking, he ran toward her. But halfway there, he stopped. The silver crystal around his neck remained cold. The sword of dawn gave no light. Everything felt empty. He closed his eyes. This isn't real. The burning village froze. The flames disappeared. The smoke dissolved into silver mist. Lady Nycera stepped from the illusion, applauding slowly. "You've learned quickly." She no longer wore a disguise. Her dark armor shimmered beneath the silver trees. Long silver black hair flowed in the breeze. Her crimson eyes glowed softly. Unlike Vaka, she did not roar. She smiled. Almost kindly. "You fascinate me, guardian." Rowan stood calmly. "You'll have to try harder." Nycera laughed. "I intend to." She raised one graceful hand. Dark ribbons of magic spread across the forest. The stars above disappeared. Everything became silent. Then, someone stepped from the shadows. Rowan's breath caught. It was his father, the man who had died many years ago. He looked exactly as Rowan remembered. Kind eyes. Strong hands. A warm smile. "My son." He whispered. "I've missed you." Rowan's eyes filled with tears. For a moment, he forgot everything else. He slowly walked forward. I thought I'd never see you again." His father smiled gently. "You don't have to fight anymore. Stay here with me. You've done enough." The words felt comforting. So comforting. Rowan wanted to believe them. He wanted to stop. To rest. To forget the war. Then, he remembered something. His father always called him Little Oak when he was a child. Always. But this man had called him my son. A tiny mistake. Almost impossible to notice. Rowan smiled sadly. "You aren't him." The illusion froze. Its smile disappeared. Then it shattered into thousands of silver leaves. Lady Nycera sighed. "I almost had you." Rowan wiped away a tear. "No. You almost fooled my memories. But not my heart." For the first time, Lady Nycera's smile faded. She looked almost disappointed. "The guardian truly has awakened," she whispered. Then her expression hardened. "So be it. If your heart cannot be deceived, I'll simply destroy it." Dark magic erupted around her. Hundreds of shadow copies appeared throughout the forest. Every copy looked identical. Each drew a black sword. Each smiled. The entire forest became an army of Nyceras. Elena, Lysra, Loomis, and Snow suddenly reappeared. They looked around in shock. "There are too many." Elena cried. Rowan slowly unsheathed the sword of dawn. Its golden blade illuminated the entire forest. He closed his eyes once more. Then, he listened. Not with his ears. With his heart. Every illusion was silent. Except one. One heartbeat echoed softly among the countless copies. Rowan opened his eyes. There. He pointed toward the real Nycera. The illusions immediately attacked. Hundreds charged at once. Rowan swung the sword of dawn in one smooth motion. A great arc of golden light swept through the forest. Every illusion dissolved into glowing stars. Only the real Nycera remained. She stared at Rowan in disbelief.
Impossible.
No illusion has ever failed me. Rowan lowered his sword. It wasn't your magic. It was your loneliness. She blinked. What? You create illusions because you believe no one can truly see you. For a long moment, neither spoke. Nysera's confident expression slowly softened. A sadness flickered across her face, one she had hidden for centuries. Far away, the Shadow King watched through the obsidian mirror. His crimson eyes narrowed. Leave, he ordered. You've learned enough. Nysera lowered her head. As you wish, my king. She looked at Rowan one final time. There was no hatred in her eyes, only curiosity. You are unlike the other guardians. She vanished into the shadows. The forest became peaceful once more. The silver trees shimmered beneath a sky full of stars. At the center of the clearing, the stone altar slowly rose from the earth. Resting upon it was a magnificent shield. It was forged from brilliant silver. Tiny constellations glowed across its polished surface. Its edge shimmered with blue-white light. The shield of stars. The second sacred relic. Rowan approached carefully. As his hand touched the shield, the stars above blazed brighter than ever before. A warm protective light surrounded everyone.
Elena smiled.
It feels safe. Lysera nodded. The shield does not grant strength. It grants protection. The greatest guardians know that saving lives is more important than winning battles. The magical map floated into the air. A third glowing path appeared. It stretched far beyond the forest, toward towering cliffs hidden above the clouds. Lysera looked toward the western sky. Our next destination is the kingdom in the sky. There, the crown of wisdom awaits. Far above the clouds, an ancient city shimmered in the fading sunlight, but unseen by the travelers. Lady Nysera watched from a distant hill. She quietly placed one hand over her heart. For the first time in centuries, she questioned whether the Shadow King was truly fighting for the right cause. The Guardian had not defeated her with power. He had defeated her with compassion. And that thought refused to leave her. The morning after the trial of the Whispering Stars, the forest seemed brighter than before. Silver leaves shimmered softly in the breeze. Birds returned to their songs. The darkness Lady Nysera had brought with her had completely vanished. Rowan fastened the shield of stars to his back beside the sword of dawn. The two sacred relics glowed faintly, as if recognizing one another. For the first time, the Guardian carried the power of both courage and protection. Lysera unfolded the magical map. A golden path rose from its surface like a ribbon of light. Instead of pointing across the land, it climbed upward, high above the mountains, into the clouds themselves. Elena tilted her head. How can a road lead into the sky? Lysera smiled. Some kingdoms were never built upon the earth. The journey west lasted many days. They crossed emerald valleys where crystal rivers sparkled beneath the sun. They climbed steep mountain trails where snow covered the highest peaks. Each evening they camped beneath brilliant stars. Each morning they continued toward the glowing path. The higher they climbed, the thinner the air became. Eventually, even the clouds rested beneath their feet. Elena laughed with wonder. It feels like we are walking through the heavens. On the seventh morning, they reached the end of the mountain trail. Ahead stood a broken stone staircase. It rose straight into the clouds. Yet there was no mountain supporting it. Only empty sky. Step after step, floating in the air. Rowan looked upward. I don't see where it ends. You aren't meant to. Lysra answered. The staircase appears only to those invited. Rowan stepped onto the first floating stair. It remained perfectly solid. Elena followed. Then Snow. Loomis walked confidently beside them. The higher they climbed, the brighter the sky became. Golden clouds drifted gently around them. Strange birds with transparent wings circled overhead. After what felt like hours, the clouds slowly parted. Everyone stopped in amazement. Above them floated an enormous kingdom. Its white marble towers stretched toward the heavens. Crystal bridges connected floating islands. Waterfalls poured from the city into the clouds below, disappearing into mist before ever reaching the ground. Golden trees lined broad streets. Hundreds of floating lanterns drifted peacefully through the air. It was unlike anything Rowan had ever imagined. The kingdom above the clouds. Lysra whispered, "The oldest city in the world." As they entered through enormous silver gates, they noticed something strange. The city was almost silent. The buildings were magnificent. The gardens perfectly cared for. Yet very few people walked the streets. Those they did see looked worried. No one smiled. An elderly man sweeping marble steps stopped when he noticed Rowan. His eyes widened. "The Guardian," he whispered. Then he quickly bowed. Within moments, others began gathering. Word spread rapidly. The Guardian has come. Soon they were welcomed into the Sky Palace. Its great hall was supported by enormous crystal pillars. The ceiling shimmered like the night sky itself. Upon a silver throne sat Queen Serafini. She appeared to be in her 50s. Her silver hair flowed over elegant white robes embroidered with stars. Though kind, her eyes carried deep sadness. She rose as Rowan approached. For a long moment, she simply smiled. "So, the Guardian has finally returned." Rowan bowed respectfully. "I've come seeking the crown of wisdom." Queen Serafini nodded slowly. "I know. But first, you must understand why it has remained hidden." She led them onto a balcony overlooking the floating city. Far in the distance, a section of the kingdom was surrounded by swirling black clouds. Lightning flashed constantly inside the storm. Elena frowned. "What happened there?" The queen sighed. "Our greatest library. The Library of Eternity." She continued. "It once held every book ever written. Every discovery. Every lesson. But 50 years ago, a creature of shadow entered the library. It feeds not upon people, but upon knowledge." Rowan looked surprised. "Knowledge?" The queen nodded. "It erases memories. The names of loved ones. The histories of kingdoms. The wisdom of generations. Everything it touches is forgotten forever." Lysra's expression darkened. "The memory wraith." Queen Serafini nodded. "It has grown stronger every year. No one who enters the library remembers why they came." The queen looked directly at Rowan. "The crown of wisdom rests within that library. But no one has reached it in 50 years. That evening, Rowan walked alone through the palace gardens. Golden flowers glowed softly beneath the moonlight. He couldn't stop thinking about the queen's words. Forgetting. Somehow that frightened him more than monsters. A familiar voice spoke behind him. "You fear losing the people you love." Rowan turned. Lady Nycera stood beneath a flowering tree. She wore a simple dark cloak instead of armor. Her crimson eyes seemed gentler than before. Rowan instinctively reached for his sword. She raised both hands. "I didn't come to fight." Elena and Lysra quietly approached from the garden path. Lysra immediately stepped in front of Rowan. "What do you want?" Nysera looked toward the floating city. "I came to warn you." Silence followed. The memory wraith. It serves no one. Not even the Shadow King. It consumes everything. If it escapes, even the Shadow King fears what will happen. Rowan studied her carefully. "Why tell us?" Nysera looked away. "Because, for the first time, I don't know which side deserves to win." Before anyone could answer, the palace bells suddenly rang. Loud.
Urgent.
A royal guard rushed into the garden. "Your Majesty," he shouted. "The storm is spreading." Everyone looked toward the Library of Eternity. The black clouds were growing larger. Lightning struck another floating bridge. Pieces of white marble broke away and disappeared into the clouds below. Queen Serafini hurried onto the balcony. Her face turned pale. "It's escaping." The clouds exploded outward. Dark mist swept across the sky. Within it, thousands of glowing pages floated through the air. Ancient books burst open by themselves. Words lifted from their pages like flocks of black birds. The letters vanished into the storm. All across the kingdom, people suddenly stopped walking. One little girl looked at her mother. "Who are you?" An old scholar stared at an empty bookcase. Tears filled his eyes. I can't remember what I spent my life studying." The memory wraith had begun feeding. Rowan tightened his grip on the Sword of Dawn. He looked toward Elena. "If I lose my memories." She smiled gently. "I'll remind you." He looked toward Lysra. "If I forget who I am." She answered calmly. "Your heart will remember." Nysera quietly lowered her eyes. She had no one who would remember her. The queen approached Rowan carrying a small silver lantern. Inside burned a pale blue flame. "This is the lantern of truth. As long as its light burns, it protects one memory. Choose wisely." Rowan looked at the tiny flame, then smiled. "I choose. My promise." "What promise?" Elena asked softly. Rowan looked toward the distant horizon. "The promise that I'll always find my way home." The lantern blazed with brilliant blue light. As dawn approached, the gates of the Library of Eternity slowly opened. Dark mist poured from within. Rows upon rows of endless books disappeared into the shadows. Somewhere deep inside waited the memory wraith. And beyond it, resting upon the highest shelf of forgotten wisdom, the crown of wisdom, Rowan lifted the lantern of truth. The blue flame illuminated the darkness. Without another word, the guardian stepped into the library. The third trial had begun. The great doors of the Library of Eternity closed silently behind Rowan. The sound echoed through endless halls lined with towering bookshelves. The shelves stretched so high they disappeared into darkness. Thousands upon thousands of books filled the ancient library. Some floated gently through the air. Others turned their own pages without anyone touching them. Tiny golden lights drifted between the shelves like peaceful stars. It was beautiful. And strangely quiet. Too quiet. Rowan looked behind him. Elena, Lysra, Nysera, Loomis, and Snow had vanished. He stood alone. Only the lantern of truth remained in his hand. Its pale blue flame flickered softly. Lysra's voice echoed faintly in his memory. The library separates every traveler. Wisdom must always be earned alone. Rowan took a deep breath, then walked forward. Every step awakened whispers. The books began speaking. Thousands of voices surrounded him. Some laughed. Some cried. Some sang forgotten lullabies. Others whispered ancient secrets. Each voice begged Rowan to stop, to listen, to stay forever. But he continued walking, holding the lantern close to his heart. Far above the shelves, two glowing eyes quietly watched him. The memory wraith. It had no true body, only swirling silver mist filled with floating words, torn pages, and fading memories. Its face constantly changed. One moment it appeared as an old scholar. The next, a frightened child. Then an elderly woman. Then someone Rowan almost recognized. It smiled. Another guardian. It whispered. They always forget. Suddenly, the library changed. The towering shelves disappeared. Rowan found himself standing beside the little cottage where he had grown up. His father was repairing the roof. His mother was hanging flowers beneath the window. The warm smell of fresh bread filled the air. It felt completely real. His mother smiled. "You're home." His father laughed. "Come help me, little oak." Rowan's heart nearly broke. He took one step toward them. Then another. The lantern's blue flame grew smaller. The memory wraith whispered gently, "You've already saved enough people. Stay. Live the life you lost." His parents smiled warmly. Waiting. Rowan closed his eyes. Tears rolled down his face. "I miss you," he whispered. "So much." The cottage remained silent. Then Rowan smiled softly. "But my parents would never ask me to abandon others." The blue flames suddenly blazed brighter. The cottage dissolved into glowing pages. The illusion vanished. The memory wraith frowned. "You remember too well." Its mist swirled faster. "Then perhaps you should remember less." Dark silver fog surrounded Rowan. The lantern's flame weakened again. This time, he forgot something. He stopped walking. He looked around in confusion. "Where am I?" The lantern dimmed further. "What am I doing here?" The memory wraith smiled. "Yes. Forget." Names began disappearing. Silver Vale. Lysra. Snow. Loomis. The Temple of Dawn. Everything slowly faded. Rowan looked at the lantern. He couldn't remember why he carried it. Only one memory remained. A quiet promise. He whispered it without understanding. "I'll always find my way home." The lantern suddenly burst into brilliant blue light. Every forgotten memory returned at once. Rowan gasped. "I remember." The memory wraith shrieked. Its entire body twisted violently.
Impossible.
No one escapes. Thousands of books flew through the air. Entire shelves collapsed. Ancient scrolls swirled like storms. The library itself seemed alive. Rowan drew the sword of dawn. Golden light illuminated the endless darkness. But before he attacked, he noticed something. The memory wraith never struck him directly. It only stole memories. It wasn't trying to kill him. It was trying to survive. Rowan slowly lowered his sword. "You aren't evil," he said quietly. The wraith froze. "You are hungry." The creature stared silently. No one had ever spoken to it that way. "What are you?" Rowan asked. The swirling mist became calmer. Its voice sounded smaller now. "I was the first librarian. Centuries ago. I tried to remember every book, every story, every life. Eventually, the knowledge became too great. My body faded. Only memory remained." Its voice trembled. "I forgot myself. I feed. Because I fear disappearing." Rowan's eyes softened. "You don't need to carry everything." The wraith looked confused. "If I let go, the stories will vanish." Rowan smiled gently.
No.
"They'll live. Inside the people who read them." The library became completely silent. Even the floating books stopped moving. The lantern of truth floated into the air. Its blue flame divided into thousands of tiny lights. Each light drifted gently toward a different bookshelf. Every forgotten memory returned to its rightful place. Books glowed warmly. Names reappeared. Lost histories returned. The wraith watched in amazement. "My burden is gone." Its mist slowly turned from silver black to brilliant golden white. The ancient spirit smiled peacefully. "For 1,000 years, I waited for someone who understood." It bowed deeply before Rowan. "Guardian, thank you." The spirit dissolved into countless glowing pages. Each page gently floated back onto the shelves. The Library of Eternity became peaceful once more. At the very center of the library, a spiral staircase of light slowly appeared. Rowan climbed it. Higher, higher, until he reached a small circular room beneath a crystal dome. Resting upon a marble pedestal was a magnificent silver crown. Tiny stars shimmered across its elegant design. Blue gemstones glowed softly around its rim. The crown of wisdom. As Rowan gently lifted it, the crown dissolved into pure light. Instead of resting upon his head, it became a glowing mark upon his forehead, then faded. Lysra's voice echoed softly through the room. "The crown is never worn. It becomes part of the guardian." Outside, the storm above the floating kingdom vanished. Dark clouds disappeared. Sunlight flooded the sky. People across the kingdom suddenly remembered everything. Children recognized their parents. Scholars laughed with joy. Books reopened by themselves. Knowledge had returned. Queen Serafini stood upon the palace balcony. Tears filled her eyes. "The library has awakened." She smiled for the first time in many years. Lady Nysera quietly watched the sunrise. She had spent centuries serving darkness. Yet today, she had witnessed something impossible. The Guardian had saved another enemy. Not by destroying it, but by healing it. She whispered to herself, "What kind of warrior wins every battle without hatred?" Far away, inside the Black Fortress, the Shadow King clenched his fist. The obsidian mirror cracked. The crown. He claimed the crown. Dark lightning filled the throne room. The remaining demon lords stepped back. For the first time, the Shadow King looked worried. "The Guardian is awakening faster than I expected." He slowly turned toward the oldest doorway in the fortress. Its enormous black chains trembled. Beyond it, something ancient breathed. Even the demon lords feared what slept there. The Shadow King whispered, "It is time to awaken the dragon of endless night." Back in the floating kingdom, The magical map unfolded by itself. Only one glowing symbol remained. It pulsed deep within the northern mountains, a place surrounded by endless ice. Lycera smiled gently. The final sacred relic, the heart crystal, awaits us in the frozen valley of echoes. Rowan looked toward the distant horizon. 3 relics had accepted him. Only one remained. And beyond that, the final battle for the world would begin. The kingdom above the clouds slowly disappeared behind the morning mist. Queen Seraphine and her people stood upon the crystal bridges, waving farewell as Rowan, Elena, Lycera, Loomis, Snow, and Lady Nycera began their journey north. The floating city shone like a second sunrise above the clouds. Soon, it vanished beyond the horizon. The magical map floated gently before them. Only one golden symbol remained. It pulsed deep within the frozen lands beyond the northern mountains. Lycera studied it carefully. The heart crystal. The final sacred relic. It has never belonged to any guardian. Rowan looked surprised. What do you mean? It chooses only those who willingly sacrifice everything. For many days they traveled through snow-covered forests. The air became colder each morning. Rivers slowly froze. The trees changed from green to silver. Gentle snowflakes drifted endlessly from the gray sky. Loomis and Snow left long trails behind them in the untouched snow. Elena pulled her wool cloak tightly around her shoulders. I've never felt cold like this. Nycera quietly raised one hand. Dark crimson magic shimmered around the group. A warm breeze surrounded them. Rowan looked at her. You helped us. She smiled faintly. I haven't forgotten your kindness. Lycera noticed, but said nothing. Several days later, they reached a tiny mountain village buried beneath thick snow. Wooden houses stood beneath heavy white roofs. Smoke curled gently from stone chimneys. Children built snow figures outside while their parents chopped firewood. Despite the bitter cold, the people smiled warmly. An old woman welcomed the travelers into her home. She served hot vegetable stew and fresh bread. The warmth of the fireplace made everyone feel safe again. That evening, the village elder joined them by the fire. His beard was as white as the snow outside. When he noticed Rowan's sword of dawn and shield of stars, his eyes widened. The guardian. He whispered. My grandfather spoke of this day. Rowan smiled politely. We are searching for the heart crystal. The old man's smile faded. The valley of echoes. He stared into the fire. Many have entered. None have returned. The room fell silent. Finally Elena asked, What lives there? The old elder slowly shook his head. Nothing. That is what makes it terrifying. The following morning, the travelers reached the edge of the frozen valley. Towering walls of ice stretched endlessly across the landscape. Everything was silent.
No birds.
No wind. Not even the sound of falling snow. It was as though the entire valley had forgotten how to breathe. Lycera stopped walking. We must go the rest of the way on foot. Loomis and Snow remained at the entrance. The magical horses bowed their heads, as if they understood. This was a path only humans could walk. The frozen valley sparkled beneath pale sunlight. Crystal cliffs reflected countless shimmering colors. Every footstep echoed across the endless snow. Then, the echoes answered. At first, only Rowan heard them. His own footsteps repeated. Then his own breathing. Then, a voice. Rowan. He stopped. Elena looked at him. What is it? Did you hear that? She listened. Only silence. As they continued deeper into the valley, the voices became louder. Not frightening. Gentle.
Familiar.
The laughter of children from Silvervale. The cheerful blacksmith. The village baker. The king. Queen Serafini. Even the temple guardian. Every person Rowan had ever helped seemed to whisper his name. Nicera frowned. I hear nothing. Lysera nodded slowly. The valley speaks differently to each traveler. Soon Elena stopped walking. She smiled softly. I hear my mother. Tears filled her eyes. I haven't heard her voice since I was a little girl. Rowan gently took her hand. It's only an echo. She nodded. I know. But it still hurts. Even Nicera paused. Her crimson eyes widened. Someone was calling her. Softly. Kindly. She whispered. Father. Her voice trembled. For the first time, Rowan realized. Lady Nicera had once been someone's beloved daughter. Lysera remained silent. No echoes came to her. Rowan noticed. You don't hear anyone. She smiled peacefully. I have already made peace with my past. As the sun began setting, the travelers reached the center of the valley. There stood a magnificent palace carved entirely from crystal ice. Its towers reflected the colors of the evening sky.
No doors. No guards. No walls.
Only silence. At the palace entrance floated a single glowing crystal. It was larger than a human heart. Warm crimson light pulsed gently within it. The heart crystal. Rowan slowly stepped forward. Suddenly, the valley shook. The crystal floated higher into the air. Ancient runes appeared across the frozen ground. Then, a gentle voice echoed throughout the valley. Not loud. Not threatening. Peaceful. Guardian. Why do you seek the heart? Rowan looked around. No one stood before him. The voice came from everywhere. I want to protect the world. He answered honestly. The voice replied. Many have said those words. Most desired power. What do you desire? Rowan thought quietly, then smiled. I want children to sleep without fear. I want families to stay together. I want people to live ordinary lives. I don't want to become famous. I simply want no one to suffer. The valley became completely silent. The heart crystal glowed brighter. But before Rowan could reach it, the sky suddenly darkened. A deafening roar shook the mountains. The frozen cliffs cracked. Massive pieces of ice crashed into the valley below. Everyone looked upward. Something enormous circled above the clouds. Two glowing crimson eyes opened. Then, immense black wings spread across the sky. They blocked out the setting sun. The dragon of endless night had awakened. Its scales shimmered like polished obsidian. Dark flames escaped from between its enormous teeth. Each wing stretched wider than the palace itself. The beast landed upon the frozen valley with a thunderous crash. The earth split beneath its claws. Even the heart crystal dimmed. Far away, inside the black fortress, the Shadow King smiled. The final relic. And the final guardian. He whispered. Now, let destiny choose. The dragon lowered its enormous head. Instead of attacking, it looked directly into Rowan's eyes. Then it spoke. Its voice echoed like distant thunder. to claim the heart. You must first prove that your heart is stronger than mine. The beast slowly opened its wings. Dark fire spread across the frozen valley. The snow began melting into black water. The final trial had begun. And this time, it would not be a battle of swords. It would be a battle of the heart itself. Dark clouds swallowed the last light of the setting sun. The dragon of endless night stood before Rowan like a living mountain. Its obsidian scales reflected no light. Its crimson eyes glowed like two burning moons. Every breath it released turned the snow into black mist. The frozen valley of echoes had become silent once more. Even the wind seemed afraid to move.
Elena instinctively stepped beside Rowan.
Lysra raised a silver staff. Nysera gathered dark magic in her hands. But before anyone could act, the dragon spoke again. Its voice rolled across the valley like distant thunder. None but the guardian may face the final trial. A circle of brilliant white light appeared beneath Rowan's feet. At the same moment, circles of silver light surrounded Elena, Lysra, and Nysera. The magic gently pushed them backward. No matter how hard they tried, they could not cross the glowing barrier. Elena reached toward Rowan. "Be careful." He smiled calmly. "I'll come back." The dragon lowered its great head. "You carry 3 sacred relics. The Sword of Dawn, the Shield of Stars, the Crown of Wisdom. But the 4th relic cannot be taken. It must be given." Rowan frowned. "I don't understand." "You will." The dragon closed its eyes. The valley disappeared. Rowan opened his eyes again. He was standing in Silver Vale. The village looked exactly as it had before the shadow beasts attacked. Children laughed beside the river. The baker placed fresh loaves on his windowsill. The blacksmith hammered glowing steel. His little cottage stood beneath the old oak tree. Smoke drifted peacefully from the chimney. Everything was perfect. The front door opened. Elena stepped outside. She smiled warmly. "You're finally home." She walked toward him and gently took his hand. "The war is over. We are safe. You don't have to leave again." Rowan looked around in confusion. "It feels so real." "It is real," she whispered. "As long as you choose it." A little boy ran toward Rowan. "Dad." He laughed. Behind him came a little girl holding a basket of flowers. "Come play with us." Rowan froze. He looked at Elena. She nodded. "Our children." His heart filled with warmth. Years seemed to pass in only moments. He watched the children grow. He repaired the bridge, harvested crops, celebrated festivals, laughed beside warm fires. No monsters came. No wars were fought. Only peace. Only happiness. Then, one evening, the sky suddenly darkened. Far beyond the northern mountains, a faint cry echoed through the wind. Someone was calling for help. Rowan looked toward the horizon. Elena gently held his hand. "You promised. You promised you'd stay." He looked at his children, then toward the distant mountains. Another cry echoed. Then another. Thousands of voices. Entire kingdoms calling for help. The dragon's voice echoed through the illusion. "You may remain. Your family will live. Your village will know peace. Only the rest of the world will fall." The happy village grew silent. The children looked at Rowan with hopeful eyes. The choice stood before him. A peaceful life, or the burden of saving everyone else. Tears filled Rowan's eyes. He knelt before the two children. He gently hugged them. "I love you." The little girl smiled. "We know." The little boy asked, "Will you come back?" Rowan smiled through his tears. "I'll spend every day trying." He stood, looked once more at Elena. She nodded proudly. "I always knew. You would choose everyone." Rowan took one step toward the distant mountains. The illusion cracked. The village faded. The children dissolved into golden light. Elena smiled one final time before disappearing. "I'm waiting for you." She whispered, "Come home." The world shattered like glass. Rowan found himself standing once again in the frozen valley. The dragon watched silently. Its enormous eyes had softened. "You surrendered. The life you desired most." Rowan lowered his head. "It wasn't easy. It was never meant to be." The dragon replied. The ancient beast slowly lowered itself until its great head rested before Rowan. For the first time, its fierce crimson eyes became gentle. "Long ago, I too was chosen." Rowan looked surprised. "You?" The dragon nodded. "I was once the first guardian's companion. I guarded the heart crystal after his passing. For 1,000 years, I have searched for another worthy soul." The dragon gently touched Rowan's forehead with one enormous claw. Warm golden light spread across the valley. "You are worthy." The heart crystal floated into the air. It drifted slowly toward Rowan. As it touched his chest, it dissolved into pure light. The warmth spread through every part of him. His heartbeat echoed across the mountains. The sword of dawn shone brighter than the sun. The shield of stars sparkled like the night sky. The mark of the crown of wisdom glowed upon his forehead. All four sacred relics had become one. The guardian was complete. Far away, inside the black fortress, the Shadow King suddenly staggered backward. His obsidian throne cracked beneath him. "No," he whispered. "The heart crystal. He has awakened." The entire fortress trembled. The remaining demon lords exchanged frightened glances. Dark flames flickered wildly. The balance of the world had shifted. Back in the valley, the barriers around Elena, Lysra, and Nysera disappeared. They rushed toward Rowan. Elena embraced him tightly. "I knew you'd come back." Rowan smiled. "I promised." Lysra bowed her head. "The guardian has fully awakened." Even Nysera smiled. For the first time, her smile held no sadness, only hope. The dragon slowly stood. Its enormous wings stretched across the sky. Its obsidian scales gradually transformed into brilliant silver. Dark flames became golden fire. The corruption that had covered it for centuries vanished completely. The ancient guardian looked younger, stronger, freer. "My duty is complete," it said peacefully. "But yours has only begun." The dragon spread its wings. Golden light filled the valley. Then it rose into the heavens, higher, higher, until it became a single shining star among countless others. The frozen valley grew quiet. The echoes had finally found peace. That evening, the magical map floated before the group one final time. Every glowing symbol disappeared. There were no more relics to find. Instead, the map slowly transformed. It now showed only one place: the Black Fortress. far beyond the northern mountains, wrapped in endless storms, the home of the Shadow King. Lysra looked toward Rowan. The journey to become the Guardian is over. She smiled gently. The journey to save the world begins now. Far away, within the deepest chamber of the Black Fortress, the Shadow King walked toward an ancient black gate sealed for 10,000 years. He placed one hand upon its surface. The gate slowly began to open. A cold voice echoed from the darkness beyond. So, the final Guardian has come. The Shadow King bowed his head. Yes, my master. The voice laughed softly. The sound alone made the mountains tremble. A greater darkness had been waiting behind the Shadow King all along, and it had finally awakened. The northern sky was hidden beneath endless storm clouds. Lightning flashed silently across the horizon. Far beyond the snow-covered mountains stood the Black Fortress. It rose from the earth like a mountain of obsidian. Its towering walls swallowed every ray of sunlight. Dark rivers flowed around its base. Above it, thousands of shadow beasts circled through the sky. 4 centuries. No one had entered those gates. No one had ever returned. Rowan stood upon a snowy ridge. The sword of dawn rested at his side. The shield of stars shimmered across his back. The light of the crown of wisdom glowed faintly upon his forehead. The heart crystal beat gently within his chest. He looked toward the fortress. So this is where it ends. Lysra quietly shook her head. No. This is where everything truly begins. The group descended into the valley. With every step, the air became colder. Not with snow, but with sorrow. Broken swords lay half buried beneath the frozen earth. Rusting helmets rested among silent stones. Ancient battlefields stretched for miles. Nysera lowered her eyes. So many warriors. They all believed they could stop him. Rowan knelt beside one forgotten grave. There was no name, only a weathered shield. He carefully placed a white mountain flower upon the stone. No one who fought to protect others should ever be forgotten. A warm breeze swept gently across the valley. For a brief moment, the heavy darkness seemed a little lighter. As they approached the fortress gates, the enormous black doors slowly opened. No guards stood outside. No soldiers waited within. Only silence. The entrance hall stretched endlessly into darkness. Torches ignited by themselves as Rowan stepped inside. Golden flames. Blue flames. Crimson flames. One after another. The ancient fortress had awakened. It was waiting. Deep inside, the Shadow King stood alone in his vast throne room. His long black cloak flowed like living smoke. His face remained hidden beneath a dark hood. He watched Rowan through an enormous obsidian mirror. So, you finally arrived. There was no anger in his voice, only sadness. Rowan and his companions walked cautiously through endless stone corridors. Strangely, the fortress felt empty.
No monsters attacked.
No traps appeared. Only ancient murals covered the walls. Rowan stopped before one. It showed 4 guardians standing beside a magnificent silver dragon. Behind them, a 5th figure stood cloaked in light. His face had been deliberately scratched away. Lysra stared silently. I've never seen this before. Further ahead, another mural appeared. This one showed the same cloaked figure kneeling before a brilliant crystal tree. Above the tree floated the 4 sacred relics. But something else caught Rowan's attention. Standing beside the cloaked warrior was someone who looked exactly like the Shadow King. Only, He wore shining white armor, not black. Nycera stepped closer. That can't be possible. Lycera slowly reached out, brushing dust from the mural. Beneath the painting, ancient words were carved into the stone. She quietly translated them. Before there was shadow, there was light. Everyone fell silent. At the end of the corridor stood enormous silver doors. They opened without a sound. Beyond them waited the throne room. The chamber was vast enough to hold an entire village. Black crystal pillars stretched toward the unseen ceiling. Dark stars shimmered overhead. At the center, upon an obsidian throne, sat the Shadow King. He slowly stood. For the first time, he lowered his hood. Everyone stared in shock. He looked almost human. His face was calm. His hair was silver. His eyes, one glowed golden, the other crimson. He did not look cruel. He looked tired. Very tired. Rowan stepped forward. "You're the Shadow King." The man nodded gently. "I am. My name was once Ether." Lycera gasped. "The first guardian." The Shadow King lowered his eyes. "I was." Silence filled the throne room. Elena could hardly breathe. "The first guardian. But you protected the world." Ether smiled sadly. "I did. For a very long time." He slowly descended from the throne. "No guardian lives forever. I watched kingdoms rise. I watched them fall. I buried friends. I buried family. I buried everyone I ever loved." His voice became quieter. "Century after century, I remained alone. The heart crystal granted me endless life." He continued, "But immortality is not a blessing. It is loneliness without end." Rowan listened quietly. He saw no hatred in Ether's eyes, only endless grief. Ether looked toward the 4 sacred relics. "I created them. I hid them. I believed another guardian would one day replace me. But no one came. I waited. For 100 years. Then 2. Then 5. 1,000 years passed. I forgot hope." Dark mist slowly gathered around his feet. My sorrow became shadow. My loneliness became this fortress. My fear became the darkness consuming the world.
Elena whispered softly.
"So, you were never evil." Ether closed his eyes.
"No.
I simply stopped believing the world could ever heal." Rowan slowly walked toward him.
No sword drawn.
No shield raised. You could have asked for help. Ether laughed quietly. Who could help an immortal? Suddenly, the fortress shook violently. The ancient black gate behind the throne burst open. Chains snapped one after another. Darkness poured into the throne room like a living ocean. A deep voice echoed from within. "So, you finally told them." Ether immediately stepped between Rowan and the gate. His face filled with horror.
"No.
You must not awaken." A gigantic shadow slowly emerged. It had no face, no body, only endless darkness. Its shape constantly changed. Sometimes it resembled a dragon, sometimes a giant, sometimes an empty cloak. It was impossible to truly see, only to fear. Lycera's voice trembled. The void. The original darkness. Ether drew a sword of pure white light. For the first time, true determination returned to his eyes. He looked at Rowan. I was never your enemy. I was your prison. I spent 1,000 years keeping it sealed. He smiled sadly. But my strength is gone. The void laughed. You failed, old guardian. Darkness spread across the fortress floor. Stone walls crumbled. The sky above split apart. Shadow beasts screamed outside. The entire world trembled. Ether handed Rowan a small silver key. It shimmered with ancient runes. The Gate of Dawn. He whispered, "It can seal the void forever. But it requires 2 guardians." Rowan looked confused. "There is only one." Ether smiled. "There are 2. He placed one hand over his own heart. Light began flowing from his body. "My time is finally over." As the void roared across the throne room, Ether raised his shining sword beside Rowan, the first guardian, and the final guardian, standing together, ready for the last battle. The black fortress trembled as if the world itself had begun to breathe. Cracks of golden light spread across the obsidian floor. Above, the endless storm clouds swirled around the fortress like a great sea. Before Rowan stood the first guardian, Ether. Beside them waited Elena, Lysra, Nysera, Loomis, and Snow. And before them all, the void. A darkness older than time itself. It had no true shape. It was every fear, every sorrow, every hatred that had ever lived in a human heart. Its voice echoed across the fortress. "You cannot destroy me. I will always exist." Ether nodded quietly. "It speaks the truth." Rowan looked at him in surprise. "The void cannot be destroyed." Ether smiled sadly. "No. Darkness is part of every soul. It cannot be erased. It can only be balanced by light." The void laughed. "You still believe in hope?" Ether answered calmly, "I believe in people." The void stretched across the throne room like an endless tide. Shadow creatures emerged from its darkness. Hundreds. Then thousands. They rushed toward the guardians. Rowan drew the sword of dawn. Its golden light filled the hall. Elena stood beside him with quiet courage. Lysra raised her staff. Nysera summoned ribbons of crimson magic, not to destroy, but to protect. The shield of stars expanded into a great dome of shimmering light, sheltering everyone within it. The first wave of shadows crashed against the barrier. The shield held. Outside the fortress, the kingdoms of the world watched the dark clouds gathering overhead. In Silver Vale, villagers stepped into the streets. Queen Seraphine stood upon the highest bridge of the kingdom above the clouds. The people of the Crystal Hills, the Whispering Forest, and the Frozen Valley all looked toward the northern sky. Though separated by great distances, they all whispered the same prayer: "May the Guardian return safely." Their hope rose like tiny lights. Across villages, across forests, across mountains, thousands of small lights drifted into the sky, like countless fireflies. Inside the fortress, Rowan noticed something extraordinary. Every light that rose from the world flowed toward the Sword of Dawn. The blade shone brighter. The heart crystal within his chest beat gently. Not with power, with hope. Lysra smiled. The relics were never powered by magic alone. They were always powered by the hearts of those who believe. The void roared in anger. "No. It is impossible." It struck the shield again and again. Each blow shook the fortress. Cracks appeared across the glowing barrier. Nycera stumbled to one knee. "I can't hold it much longer." Ether stepped beside her. "You won't have to." He held up the small silver key. The Gate of Dawn appeared at the far end of the throne room. It was enormous, made of white stone and golden crystal. Ancient runes glowed softly across its surface. This gate sealed the void once before. Ether said, "But only together. Can we close it again?" Rowan understood. 2 guardians. One ancient. One new. He nodded. "I'm ready." Ether smiled. "So am I." The 2 guardians walked toward the Gate of Dawn. The void realized their plan. It surged forward with terrifying speed. Darkness swallowed the floor, the walls, the ceiling, everything. Elena cried out, "Rowan!" He looked back and smiled. "I'll come home." Those were the same words he had spoken before every journey. As the void reached them, Ether placed one hand upon the gate. Rowan placed the silver key into the ancient lock. The heart crystal glowed brilliantly. The sword of dawn burst into golden fire. The shield of stars expanded across the entire fortress. The mark of the crown of wisdom shone upon Rowan's forehead. The 4 sacred relics became one. A pillar of radiant light erupted into the heavens. The darkness stopped. The entire world became silent. The Gate of Dawn slowly opened. Not into another place, but into pure sunrise. Warm golden light poured across the fortress. The void screamed. Not in pain. In fear. It had existed for countless ages, yet it had never faced such gentle light. The light did not attack it. It embraced it. The endless darkness slowly dissolved. Not destroyed. Healed. Balanced. At peace. The storm clouds disappeared. The black fortress began transforming. Its obsidian walls became white stone. Dead gardens bloomed with flowers. Broken towers repaired themselves. Dark rivers became clear streams. Birds sang where monsters had once flown. The fortress was no longer a prison. It had become a sanctuary. Ether looked around with peaceful eyes. "I had forgotten how beautiful the world could be." He turned toward Rowan. "My friend, you have done what I never could." Rowan shook his head. "We both did." Ether smiled. His body slowly became transparent. Golden light drifted from his hands. "My watch is over." He looked toward the sunrise. "I think someone has been waiting for me." In the distance, gentle figures made of light appeared. His family. His old friends. The companions he had lost through the centuries. They smiled. Ether smiled back. Then, like the morning mist beneath the sun, he faded peacefully into the light. Days later, the kingdoms celebrated together. The roads were filled with travelers. The forests bloomed brighter than ever. The crystal hills sparkled. The kingdom above the clouds rang its ancient bells. Even the frozen valley became a place where flowers bloomed each spring. Peace had returned. Lady Nycera chose not to rule. Instead, she traveled the world helping rebuild villages that had suffered during the long years of darkness. People no longer called her a demon lord. They called her the Lady of Second Chances. Lycera returned to the sanctuary of the Guardians. She reopened its great library. Children from every kingdom came to learn there. She often smiled when they asked about the Guardian. His greatest strength was kindness. King Alaric welcomed Rowan and Elena back to Silvervale. The people filled the streets with flowers and songs. No one celebrated because Rowan had defeated an enemy. They celebrated because he had saved the world without hatred. Years passed peacefully. Rowan and Elena never sought riches or glory. They rebuilt their little cottage beneath the old oak tree, just as Rowan had always dreamed. Children often visited after finishing their chores. Rowan would tell them stories beside the fireplace. Not stories about battles. Not stories about monsters. Stories about courage, friendship, forgiveness, and hope. One quiet evening, a little girl looked up at Rowan and asked, "Were you really the greatest guardian who ever lived?" Rowan smiled warmly. He looked out the window. The stars shone peacefully above Silvervale. He gently shook his head.
No.
The greatest heroes are the people who choose kindness. Every single day. The children smiled. Outside, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the old oak tree. High above the village, 4 stars suddenly shone a little brighter than all the others. The sword, the shield, the crown, the heart, watching over the world, forever. And so, beneath a sky full of peaceful stars, the kingdom slept without fear, knowing that dawn would always come again.